Hello, ROC. FOXPEN here, bringing you another episode of FOXPENMANSHIP, a Redwall and ROC show where we discuss everything and anything ROC and Redwall related. In this, the first episode of the Fanfare series, I will be interviewing some of the members of the ROC who have been around for a while. We've seen it, heard it, wrote it, and read it, and we call ourselves the Old Guard. Yes, your beloved host FOXPEN is not the spry young vixen you no doubt picture her as, but rather a tempered and wizened old fox with crinkled whiskers and memories of Redwall that are decades old. Joining me in this episode are my good friends Nara, who you may recognize if you've listened to the show before, and newcomer to the show, my good friend Matra. I'd like to start the series off with a short essay I wrote originally back in February of 2011 for my DeviantArt account, in direct response to the passing of Brian Jacks. It was a significant moment for the ROC, and one of the first times in my life I found myself mourning the passing of a stranger. Not one to be involved in celebrity culture, his passing struck me harder than I could have imagined, and harder than I was prepared for. Yet, in hindsight, it was appropriate to grieve. Redwall has always proven to be more than just a story for me. It was a huge part of my life, and continues to be so. Jacks helped shape my childhood. He was the author of all the good, the fantasy, and the escape that I needed as a young child. Jacks and his beloved world will always be near and dear to my heart. So, I present to you a polished version of my 2011 essay, Redwall and the Inspiration of a Generation. The first time I ever encountered the tales of Redwall was when the animated series was aired in Canada. I was enthralled, not just because of the cute forest fuzzies running amok with swords and arrows, but because the story was really quite engaging, and it impressed me. At the time, I had never indulged in an epic, even though I could mow through books quicker than most other children my age. I was never one to really see heroes in any character or story I'd ever read, and oftentimes preferred the villains because, frankly, they were a lot cooler. So when I found myself not only enjoying this giant novel, I was rooting for Matthias and the creatures of Redwall over the murderous fiend Clooney the Scourge, and I decided to delve a little deeper into Brian Jacks' world. I read Madame Mayo next, and loved it. Slagar was the most sinister kidnapper ever, and the wear it absolutely freaked me out. I loved watching as Madame Mayo developed from a spoiled brat into a hero like his father Matthias. I started buying these Redwall books up like crazy, reading them in the order they were published because I hadn't quite realized yet that, even though they were written in a specific order, they did not take place in that order. When I finally did realize the order, and I started reading them in a chronological order until I ran out of books and had no choice but to wait. I regret nothing and recommend this approach to new readers. Redwall was also very important to me because it was my father that would take me to the bookstore and pick up a new book for me almost every time I saw him, which wasn't very often. Child of divorce, this is one of the few good memories I have with my father. Not to say he was absent, but I was young and didn't have a choice in how often I saw him. So Redwall really does strike me in a familiar sense. It's comforting, and it has provided me happy memories that I otherwise wouldn't have had. I ate the stories up. I spent countless hours poring over those books until the spines ripped and the glue holding the pages in just couldn't do its job anymore. My copy of Mossflower, my most favorite book to this day, is held together with scotch tape and rubber bands so I don't lose those precious dog-eared pages. My copy of Madame Mayo is in 7 pieces. I'm not joking. I spent beautiful sunny days in the summer reading indoors or on this porch. I read the books on the bus, in the car, before bed and into the wee hours of the morning, during my lunch breaks and recesses. I started to draw the characters. I still have the first picture I ever really drew, consciously putting effort into it. It's a Feldo from Martin the Warrior. It's not very good, but it did turn me on to the course of fantasizing about becoming a professional artist one day. While that never panned out, I still enjoy drawing and art, and I have Redwall to thank for that. When high school showed up, I had merely gotten better at reading, and everyone knew me as that kid that draws animals. My imagination would never shut off. I wrote, and constantly. I wrote, drew, read, wrote some more, and repeated the process until I felt I had gotten good. Then I realized how long the road really was, and continued on trying to improve myself, for the sake of impressing my friends in the ROC, and for the sake of impressing myself. To this day I pride myself over my fiction works, which, although I don't talk about much, do keep my mind busy. The Redwall series were the first books to ever make me truly care about the characters on a mature level. The prose of Lutra made me sob when young Picknam was murdered by the jackdaws at St. Ninian's. I crooned and swooned when Gon fell in love with Columbine in Mossflower. I cheered out loud when Matthias slew Asmodeus Poison Teeth in Redwall. From the magnificent feasts and food the characters ate to the great maps that sprawled an entire expansive world, the books were so detailed that it was difficult to keep up sometimes. But there was always a friendly reminder somewhere in another book, set maybe 4 or 5 after or before the one I was then reading. Then there was the Redwall online community. It started with Redwall Beach, a role-playing board on easy boards. Then from there, to Rouge, the infamous collaborative e-zine, where I lurked more than posted, but I still remember those days fondly. Some of us kids, mind you, we weren't all kids, were quite zany, but it was a supportive community, and many of us went on to become artisans of all sorts simply because Redwall gave us an outlet for our creativity. Others have shown up as important business people, programmers, voice actors, authors, and so forth. We all met because of Redwall, and I made some very good friends because of our passion for reading. I wanted to become an artist and a fiction writer myself. That turned into wanting to become a children's book illustrator, a video game designer, a movie director, a scriptwriter, a historian, and somehow it went into law. Those writing talents were apparently very useful for writing up statements of claims. When law no longer interested me and I found myself in the mood for change, I gravitated towards the wilds of Mossflower, becoming a forestry technician, a steward of the wilderness and caretaker of natural resources. I like to think my own love of the outdoors guided me towards this path, but who am I to claim that credit when I was literally reading those books on child camping trips and writing posts for Mossflower Odyssey 2 whilst in a canoe? As I grew and my taste matured, I slowly became unimpressed with the predictable formula of the Redwall stories in the later books, such as the Tagarong, Triss, and Lomhenge. Still, I could not let go of the fantastical stories, and was rewarded when the series picked up again from its stagnation in the newer stories, like Rackety Tam. The last book I read of Redwall at the time of writing this essay was Rackety Tam. It was a sigh of relief. The excitement, the emotion, and the sheer greatness of Redwall was returned to me. Unfortunately, college struck, and with textbooks and forced reading comes stagnation. Life stepped in, with several new, mature friends, and a job, and a relationship all came with it. For several years, I stopped reading for pleasure. Only recently have I forced myself back into it, and even then, it is a slow-going process. My attention span isn't what it used to be, and the need to escape the reality I've carefully built for myself is no longer necessary. Still, I pride myself on my collection of Golden Spine Tales of Redwall. I'm several books behind, and while part of me is ashamed, the other part of me is excited there are still new stories for me to indulge in. I am very disappointed that Brian did not live to see the release of his last book, The Rogue Crew. Still, he left a lasting legacy, and I look forward to catching up on the series that guided me for so long. My baby nephew has arrived, and I can barely wait for the day when I crack open his first Redwall book and introduce him into the magical world that delighted me my entire life. I feel a little empty today, what with the most influential person in my life to this point passing away. Jax helped keep my childhood bearable, and in many ways made it a happy one, and gave me interest to pursue. He made my teenage years bearable, provided me with friends and an entire community to not only be a part of, but to turn to. He gave me ideas to enact with art and fiction, and indirectly encouraged me to discover and pursue dreams. Really, and most importantly, he gave me passion. Thank you, Brian. Your place is at the head of the table in the Great Hall, surrounded by the heroes you have given me and an entire generation. Rest in peace, my old friend. Thank you. So I'm here with my first guest, FOXPENMANSHIP favorite and sleep avoider extraordinaire, Nara. Say hello, Nara.
Hello.
Nara is, well, I mean, if you've listened to the show before, if you're part of Redwall Survivor, you've heard of him. He's a multi-time Survivor contest writer, having competed in several contests over the years, including Redwall Survivor's very own Mossflower Odyssey series. Now, last episode, you mentioned your favorite book, which you're going to kindly remind everyone of. Your favorite
The
Redwall
favourite
book?
book in the Redwall series, that one was Mossflower itself.
Yeah, Mossflower, big fan favorite.
That's the one.
And did you see the cartoon first, or did you read the books first?
Oh, I read the books first.
Yeah.
I think the only cartoon that I saw before I read the book of anything was Wind in the Willows. And that was because I was very small. But yeah,
That's fair.
everything else, I've read the books first.
Nice.
I used to think of myself as one of those purists who always liked the books better, but I've grown out of that.
Yeah, that was quickly taken out of me the first time I tried to read Tolkien after seeing.
Oh yeah,
I read The Hobbit, but then the Lord of the Rings trilogy came out, and I tried to read those, and I was just like, no, man, I ain't got the attention span.
I got stuck on the Two Towers for 7 years.
Oh gosh, I have a copy.
I think I got stuck in the middle of one of the many 50-page treatises on trees or war, and I forget which.
Oh, it's tedious. It is tedious. I have a copy of the Silmarillion, and once upon a time, I made the mistake of opening it.
Oh dear. Yeah,
And
no, that one you put on the shelf, and
that was the first book I ever put down. One of the first books, anyway.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love Tolkien. I love the story he tells. I don't like the story. I like the stories, but I don't like the books.
Yeah, I mean, he suffers
Sacrilege.
enormously from being one of the first, and from having been such a world-building nerd. Because he was such a nerd.
Yeah.
He put so much effort into building the worlds, and you're like, yeah, everybody who's written fantasy novels since that point knows full well you don't do 50 pages on a single topic. You
can't.
Don't.
You just
try
can't.
and just weave that world building in naturally as exposition as everything goes on.
Sure.
But if he'd done that, the books would have been a third of the size.
To say. There's entire tomes of just like notes on his world building too. It's like it is an impressive feat what he created. It's amazing, but at the same time, like when you're, gosh, how old was I when the Lord of the Rings came out? Like 12, 13 years old, and you just saw Orlando Bloom on the big screen shooting arrows, and you pick up that book, and it's not what you wanted. Get to the flowing locks of blonde hair, man. I want to see him. No, not how it goes. Dang. I'll read this 12 pages on, like, I don't know, the frickin' pony that Aragorn takes care of.
Oh, God, the pony. I don't even remember the pony's name. But I remember they have to whack it on the bum and send it on its way before they get on the Brandywine. No, the ferry. The Buckleberry Ferry, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they have to slap the horse and make it run off. And they're like, I hope we see that horse again. And then I think they do in the end of the third book, in that whole 100 pages of reclaiming the Shire, because why wouldn't you write that in there?
Of course. It's a good series, but yeah, it's like sometimes, especially for
it's the first of its kind.
Yeah,
we now know how to tell stories much more effectively and elegantly.
And that's what the movies it does so well. Peter Jackson just took the good stuff and gave us that, and just fluffed off the rest of it, which was great.
You mean you didn't like Tom Bombadil?
He was like, didn't he have? Maybe I'm thinking Radagast the Brown, but didn't Tom Bombadil have like one page where he sings a song and then you never see him again?
No, he's there for quite a while. He guides them through an entire, supposedly very dangerous forest area.
Okay, then I must be
and
thinking
there's a
Radagast.
Mother tree. Yeah, I think maybe you're thinking Radagast, because he doesn't... he's one of the ones in the Hobbit trilogy who appears on the screen for far longer than he appeared in the books.
Way too long.
And that's not even mentioning the elves. Why were the elves there? Why were they there?
Because Orlando Bloom, let's face it.
I have so many questions about the decision-making behind the Hobbit movies, and I'm not going to ask them now, because this is meant to be about Redwall. And we're about 10 minutes in, and we've only said about 15 words about it.
It's true. So you like the film or do you like the book better? Well, actually, with Redwall, I saw the cartoon first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I picked up Redwall because I just watched it I'd seen the trailer for it on Cartoon Network back in the day. I said, "Oh, that looks cool. I'll read the book before I see it." And I read
Okay.
Redwall, and I just absorbed the entire series. Couldn't get my hands on enough of them.
Mm. It's very addictive writing style.
Yeah, and it's for that age too. It's perfect for kids. It just gives you enough details that your tiny mind can latch into it. My tiny mind, I was a dumb kid. But it also like it moves. It's so well paced that like the action's there, and then you get your drama and occasionally your sadness, your puzzles. It's got everything that 10-year-old Fox Pen wanted.
Murders.
Murders, yeah. You got your war, your gruesome death. There's poisoning.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about the various snakies and the venoms and the poisons.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How did you first come across Redwall? Because that's how I came across it. I saw a trailer on the Cartoon Network, and I said, "Hey, mice in medieval clothes, I dig it." How about you?
I went to a school that bored me to tears, but it had a giant library, and I'll send you photos of it at some point, because every time I show anybody photos of the library at my old school, they look at me and they're like, "Did you go to Hogwarts?" No, not quite.
Are you a wizard?
It's a very, very old school in the UK. I think it was chartered in the 15th century, mid 16th century, so about 1530 AD, which does make it older than America.
Wow. I mean, in Europe, if you throw a stone, you're going to find something that's older than the U.S. of A.
You are,
Definitely
yeah.
Everything's older than Canada.
I live in a house that's older than the US.
Yes, you do, and you send me photos, and it's lovely.
It is. Yeah. So, what on earth was the underlying point? Oh yeah. So I was at this school, and I was bored to tears because it was. I didn't care about learning. Not really. I was just there because I was told, "You're clever. You should go to this one." I'm like, all right. And they had this massive library, and they had this section that was just full of fantasy novels. And I picked up Redwall. That was it, really. There was just this whole shelf of Redwall, and I think one of my friends handed it to me. I honestly forget which one. They didn't have any presence on the ROC. I don't think they ever really considered joining, but as soon as I read the books, I was looking things up, going like, "Ooh, has anybody told actual stories about St. Ninians?"
Yeah.
Find out more about these characters. And then I found some role-playing boards. Sea Warriors Battle Board. God, that was before easy boards. It was before PHPBB.
Could have said that. That's old, man.
Yeah.
Ooh. How long ago would that have been?
That would have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's
pretty much on the nose, because I would have been 13, 14 when I first picked up a Redwall book. So yeah.
So it hooked you right away. You didn't even stand a chance.
Oh no, not at all. I had no chance whatsoever. Actually, that's a lie. It did hook me right away, but it was the second book series to hook me in. Now, the problem is that the first one was Anne McCaffrey's Dragon books. And Anne McCaffrey had a vice grip over how her books were represented on the internet, because she was one of those authors who got really worried about licensing. Copyright and things like that. So she had these really stern, strong guidelines on what you were allowed to write. And at one point, if you came up with the Dragon Riders of Pern OC, you had to describe it using one of those character outline forms like we so often see these days as well. But you had to send it to her for approval. Actually, to the author, to be allowed to write them. And that was that was something else, man. But that was such a
Oh,
high barrier to entry that I just
that is.
bounced right off. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
ended up finding Redwall instead, and there was no barrier to entry at all. So I was like, oh, excellent.
That is some controlling nonsense right there. Can you imagine trying to pull that off nowadays online?
Oh, my word. I
My
mean, you could try, I suppose, but it wouldn't work.
No, you'd have to just do what George R. R. Martin does and not read fan fiction if you don't like what your fans are up to.
I think that's the only option.
That's insane. I couldn't even imagine even like daring to tell my fans, no, you can't like enjoy this without my express permission. That's like it's my toy, and if you want to play
Yeah.
with it, you have to adhere to my rules.
Oh, exactly. It was very strange.
I am so glad Redwall was far more inclusive because I didn't jump in right away. I think it was probably another year or so before I'd gone on the Redwall website and I'd seen the Redwall the recipes that were posted on the website, and there'd always been the link like thanks to Lucas for making these recipes, Lucas of Redwall Beach, and finally one day I just clicked the link to Redwall Beach, and I found their website, and I was like, oh, forums. I guess I'll see what that's all about. I don't really know what a forum is. It's the early 90s, and this is like my first time really on the internet. And lo and behold, I was hooked. I never left.
Yeah.
More than a decade later. It was nice. It was something that you could take part in, and it was very little fuss, and there were so many people there. You're bound to make a friend.
Yeah. It was very, very collaborative and a lot of fun for being so.
Yeah. It continues to be collaborative too. To this day, it remains like to be part of the ROC really is like it's a hobby with friends.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't be in the ROC in a vacuum.
No.
You've got to have
Someone
somebody
will eventually pull you out.
ridiculous turtle character off. Just say, I've got this idea for a character, and they're a turtle. And you're like, okay. You got any other ideas about them? No. That's it. Their name is Myrtle.
Myrtle the turtle.
Myrtle the turtle.
I love Myrtle.
Yep.
I love her. I love her. I bet Lumet hangs out with her. It's canon now.
Absolutely. Immediately accepted as canon.
On that note, you were saying so you Redwall was like your second book addiction, and last episode we were talking about what Redwall had done for a lot of us, and unfortunately we had ended the episode already, and we're just shooting the breeze afterwards. You'd mentioned how Redwall encouraged an insatiable appetite for reading in you. And this struck me because, yeah, it wasn't actually until I read Redwall that I became obsessive over books, and not just Redwall, but other books. There were other series that it introduced to me. And you mentioned one. Well, you mentioned a few. But you mentioned one called The Welkin Weasels by Gary Kilworth. And this was my Redwall after Redwall. Like Wind in the Willows was your Redwall before Redwall.
Oh yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was medieval animals in clothes with swords, and I couldn't get enough of it. and from there, of course, my taste changed and matured and everything else. But still, yeah, Redwall really did encourage me to read, and I don't think I'd read as well as I did if it weren't for Redwall.
No, same. Well, yeah, probably the same here. Redwall kind of. I wonder what it was that it hooked into. I think for me, it hooked into my love of world building. Because much as I call Tolkien an absolute insufferable nerd for his world building,
Nerd.
I am one too. I am absolutely horrendous when it comes to world building. But that also means I really love digging through other people's series and just building this world map and this understanding of the various cultures that inhabit it and going, oh, okay, right. So provided we forget the fact that, there was a horse in that one book, we're fine. But that's much like
And a beaver.
yeah, good point. There's the horse and the beaver, and then Clooney is from Portugal, isn't he?
Yep.
And those three things are kind of like quite a few of the things that show up in Terry Pratchett's first two books. The Colour of Magic and The Light Fantastic. Nobody says to start Discworld with those two books because they are what he wrote before it became the Discworld. He built the Discworld after those two books became so very popular. And they've got a lot of archaic ideas in them that were holdovers from him writing parodies of other series. Actually, one of them ties in very nicely with a previous thing. It's called the Wormberg. It's an upside-down mountain, and it is full of dragons. And it is a very, very clear rip of all of Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern books.
Is this because he couldn't have a fan character when he was a kid?
That must be it. Oh, that must be it.
Revenge.
And that's why he wrote Discworld, because he wasn't allowed to write his own character. Pachette, the Green Dragon Rider.
Dig for the man.
Excellent. That's
the ultimate motivator is spite. I believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this whole absolute need to keep reading was... I don't know where it came from. It was probably all sorts of things put together. I mean, I was young. It was probably, just the whole let's keep reading good versus evil. Every other page you turn over and there'd be some fantastic turn of phrase, or he'd go into one of his feast descriptions, or about the only thing I generally skimmed over was the songs. Because for me, it is spectacularly difficult to write a good song. Like, it's stupendously difficult. I got a bit of a reputation in MO4 for slapping poetry all over the place with Aldrich, and that was part of the whole. I'm trying to find a way to write songs into fiction that actually catch you, and that your brain can immediately read them and play them back to yourself, and you don't cringe at the meter or look at it and go, really you're going to use dewdrop there? Why?
It's tough. I'm like that too. If I don't have a melody in my head, I very much cannot concoct one on my own. So when I look at some songs that say Brian himself wrote, yeah, it's great poem, but I'm not gonna really spend much time on it because I can't hear the music myself.
Yeah.
And as a writer too, on the flip side, it's extremely frustrating because this is a weak point for you, because as a reader, it's a weak point for the writer.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I defaulted to iambic pentameter whenever I wrote them.
All faithful.
It seems to work quite well, so
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were mentioning, Redwall helped you get into reading. A lot of things did, but when you were young and you were reading all these books, did you notice a common theme with them? Like you mentioned the Deptford Mice by Hob. I can't remember the first name.
Robin Hobb.
Robin Hobb, thank you. And then of course, good old Silverwing, that series by Kenneth Opel. And The Animals of Farthing Wood is another classic. I think everyone, well, I shouldn't say that, but I think a lot of people are familiar with The Animals of Farthing Wood. It's one of the 80s cartoons, got one of those treatments.
Oh yes, it did. And it wasn't as bad an idea to show to your kids Watership Down, but it was close.
But there's another one, Watership Down. Like, these were all books that Redwall got me into with a common theme, but then there were others that I just happened to find, like Silverwing. But it's like, yes, talking animals and these great adventures. Did you find you were attracted to that kind of storytelling?
I mean, if you're asking me if I'm a furry...
Safe space man now.
Yeah, I was attracted to that kind of story. I mean, I think when you look at the other books I chose to read, God help me, and I actively did choose to read them when I was younger. There was a lot of Charles Dickens in there, Three Musketeers, but the full novel turns out to be a lot longer and not necessarily more tedious, but there are a lot more parts to it than any of the adaptations have ever put to screen. Even, full-length TV series, nothing has captured everything that Dumas put to paper. It's absurd. There's so much going on in it. But everything I chose to read was definitely about navigating a world that was so much bigger than yourself and so dangerous. So Deptford Mice is a really good example of that, because it is not only mice navigating a world of cats and humans, because there are humans in that world, but there's also a lot of, there's magic. There is dark magic, and we're talking pretty horrible stuff to read. And it I almost want to say that the genre that I read was formalized anxiety.
Oh wow!
And I know that's a very grandiose and very pretentious label to put on it, but everything I read told the story of being a small entity in a very big world and having to cut your own path through it, because otherwise you were just boned. And that's true of all of these stories. Animals of Farthing Wood is a very good example. The first book, the entire first biggest book, is a pilgrimage in its own right, and pilgrimage repeats as a concept throughout the 6 sequels and the prequel. Deptford Mice, I think all 3 books contain a pilgrimage in one form or another, a long journey that gets you from beginning to end, and you have to fight to get through. Silverwing and Welcome Weasels, I've got some familiarity with, not a lot though. I think they were mentioned by other folks in our previous interview. I've definitely heard of Welcome Weasels. People kept recommending them to me. I think I picked the wrong book to try and read, because I'm sure I picked one up and tried to read it, and I didn't really get on with it. Magical Saga of Owls by Martin Hawk. Those 3, admittedly quite out of print, so quite hard to find these days, unless you get lucky in a second-hand shop. Those 3 definitely have pilgrimage in them. So, carving a path as a small creature in a very big and very dangerous world.
That's a really good point. As a child, of course, you'd relate to that as well. You are a very small creature in a big world, and you're powerless of the forces that are guiding your fate, and that's living and just the forces that be. There's Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by
yes,
O'Brien. Robert O'Brien, I believe, wrote that one.
Yeah,
and there's a good one
by somebody else entirely.
I believe so. Yeah. I also think it got a movie, and they called it like Mrs. Brisby, because the Frisbee Company was like, you can't have our trademark.
Yeah, Robert O'Brien.
Yeah.
And then
and
there are 2 sequels by his daughter, Jane Conley. There you go.
Oh, well, that's actually fantastic.
Yeah.
That's one of the only times I like sequels written by other authors, if they're the children of the original author.
Yeah.
Something special, like a legacy going on there. But Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, there's a really good story that attracts children, because especially like those quiet kids that are like you're by yourself in the world. Maybe you don't have friends, you got a bad home situation, whatever. But you're in a situation where you know yourself, and so you relate to Mrs. Frisbee. She knows herself, she's an adult, she's in charge, but then everything is just taken away from her when her kid gets sick, and then the world gets turned upside down because of everything else that she discovers as she's going on. And it's such a fight for her to get to the end and have that happy ending. And there's so many tragedies that take place in that book. whether in the past and they're reflecting the future or the present rather, or that are just happening in the course. But yeah, that was one that I really related to because there was this mouse going about her business really, and something that could happen to anyone fell onto her lap, and it wasn't some like invading force that was gonna like burn her kingdom down. It wasn't some horrible dragon that like kidnapped her. It was just her child getting sick that prompted her to go onto this adventure.
There was a combine harvester as well, wasn't there?
Oh yes, there was a combine harvester as well. The farmer's
Her
pet,
home was close to a rock that the combine harvester would have to work around, but it wasn't close enough.
Yes.
So the harvester would just mulch her entire home, and of course her child, being sick, was therefore unable to move. They'd been planning to move out, and they couldn't.
It was
and
one
then
of those...
the end of the book is the rats, because she's helped the rats now come along and move the entire house into the shadow of the rock. I'm pretty sure that's it. And it's a very, it's an excellent story, especially in terms of just the concept of paying it forward. You do good for other people, and hopefully, eventually, it comes back around, and somebody does good for you when you need it.
Yeah, and I find it's even today. It's one of those stories which relates to a lot of people that maybe they don't have the regular life for whatever reason. Like they don't have that white picket fence. Things are bad in their life. Maybe they have a sick sibling, a sick parent. Maybe just something is up, something negative, a force in their life that is out of their control. They can relate to Mrs. Frisbee because she isn't this prophet, she isn't like Matthias where she's like the reincarnation of Martin himself. She's just a chick and she has really bad luck. And I think a lot of kids get behind that because, everybody wants their own grand adventure. No, you're not going to have it, chances are. But if it can happen to Mrs. Frisbee, maybe in my mind I can have that adventure. And I think it's an important book for kids to read, I think. And it's one of those books that I found after Redwall when I'd grown up just a little bit. And you need a little maturity to read it. It's what is it? It's like Felidae or Plague Dogs. You're not you're not gonna win every battle. Plague Dogs was like I think Plague Dogs was my first non-happy ending story that was like, oh wait, this can happen. The heroes don't have a happy ending, that they're gonna, spoiler, die. And again,
it does.
Like Frisbee was like that too, but also Redwall had moments like that. But in Redwall you always have that consistent feel-good ending. No matter what, you're going to come out on top. The heroes are going to win in Redwall. But it prepares you for more mature reading.
Yeah. Book I'm looking for here. So all the other ones we've talked about reminded me of this one, and it's a really difficult book to read. It's very mature subject matter. And I think it is this one. Yep, it is. It's called Play, Little Victims by Kenneth Cook. And it is a story about the end of the world. Specifically, it's very, very overt. In the first few pages of the book, God looks down at Earth and goes, ew, and freezes the entire planet. Just freezes it, just kills everything like that. Except for 5 square miles. She misses because they were on the other side of the Earth from him. And in those 5 square miles is a single family of mice. That's it. The rest of the world is now glacier. But those 5 square miles contain a single family of mice, and they grow. Because there's nothing else there. But alright, there's leftovers from human civilization, so they grow and they become their own civilization, and they're mice, so they're going quick, so generations are happening very, very fast. And they end up needing to control their population. And this is where it gets really difficult to read, because they are reading through human archives trying to work out, well, how did the humans keep their populations down? They discover crime, and they discover war, and they start doing them deliberately. So at this point, you're reading the book and you're like, oh no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no. And exactly as the humans did, they get better and better at war because the population is still expanding. So it's still, it's a very, very difficult read. But it's right down there with Watership Down, with Plague Dogs.
You could even, pull Animal Farm into that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Because it's all about government gone wrong.
Yeah, and I think the reason, like, Redwall, because it was like my first literary love, I'm attracted to all these books with animals as the main character. I think that animals emote in a different way than humans. And because we can anthropomorphize them, we can give them emotions and ways to express themselves far beyond what we can do as humans. So, like, who can forget Aldrich's war dance in Mossflower Odyssey 3? Like, 4. Yes, sorry. I wasn't there for 3. I did 1 and 2 and then skipped 1 because I'm cool.
Yeah, that one was tricky to write, like a stoat flailing around like an absolute idiot.
Yeah, and it is a challenge, but at the same time, especially with the horror story that you just told me about Play Little Victims, I'm already looking that up. I'm gonna buy that because that sounds amazing. There's something more horrifying about it when animals fall to the evils of humans and reenact them like an Animal Farm, because animals are supposed to be innocent. They're supposed to be these cute little dum-dums that we've either domesticated, or these, vicious and cunning animals of the wild that are elusive to us and dangerous. So when they start becoming human, it's far more, it hits harder than if, say, it was 2 humans that were left on Earth and decided, okay, we're not only going to repopulate, but when our generations go down the line, we're going to relearn war and violence. We just expect that grittiness from humanity.
Yeah, there's something to that, I think. You'll probably find the intersection, the point where human told fiction, this idea that we make animals represent people, they're caricatures, essentially. We make animals caricatures of people. You probably find that in the, what do they call it? His Dark Materials, Pullman, because of the animal demons, or daemons, however you want to pronounce them. And especially the way that children's demons keep changing shape constantly to reflect their mood and the way they're feeling and how they're interacting with the world at that point in time. And then over time, those demons settle into a single shape and they don't really change anymore.
But they still represent that underlying bit of human emotion there. I actually just thinking about this, like the Egyptian gods, many pantheons of religion and mythos use animals to represent their deities. So, like, the Egyptians particularly well known for animal-headed gods, and it's not that these gods were literally thought of as to have, like, Anubis. He didn't literally have the head of a jackal. It was representative of an aspect of Anubis. And it represented it better than art at the time, and humanity could explain that emotion and that spirituality. So I think Redwall is kind of a gateway into this realization, into this particular trope of animals and anthropomorphizing them to better represent humanity and to get deeper into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, it's one of, how to phrase this? I have about 80% of a thought in my head, but I haven't got it crunched up into a ball yet. I think Redwall was a really good compromise and a really good gateway, as you say, into this whole representing aspects of humanity in animal form. And there's, it goes way back into religion. and non-religious spiritualities. Ceremony, we're talking how people wanted to be buried. Even going back as far as potter's marks, the symbols that people would carve into stuff to mark it as theirs for selling and buying at the market. You've got animal representation all over the place because animals are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I suppose maybe that was where it really came from, was tribal humans standing and just watching the world go by and thinking, I like that snake. I like that snake a lot. Or that jackal. Or the lion, or the mice, or the whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's present in every culture, so there's something to it, whether or not we intentionally use animals in this matter. It's definitely present wherever. And like I said, Redwall was a really good way to open up that as a writing tool for me. And there's so many good fictions out there. Deptford Mice, Welcome Weasels, The Animals of Farthingwood, Nim, I'm always going to mention Nim. That it just really drive home the point of why animals are so appealing, especially to, and I don't want to insult children here, children aren't stupid, but especially to a mind that isn't as mature as an adult's mind. That inherent human relation to animals. Well, of course, kids are going to bond with that too. I think that's important to recognize, that part of the draw of Redwall is that ancient respect and reverence, I suppose, for animals. And I mean, who doesn't want to be a wolf when they grow up, right?
I speak for yourself. I was always on track to be a squirrel.
Oh, all right, then fine. Be that way.
Yeah.
Tough-eared nutter.
Excellent.
But, yeah, I mean, so Redwall has this huge draw, and it definitely influenced what we read. But I mean, what was the takeaway from the ROC? So, like, it's given you a love of reading. I mean, it contributed to that to a lot of us, and yet you've also wanted to contribute back through creativity, whether or not you intentionally wanted to give back to the ROC or you just wanted to do this thing. You've been a part of multiple Survivor contests. I mean, why would you do that to yourself? Is it really because it's the love? Is it the love of Redwall? Is it the love of writing? Is it the sense of community? Do you like pain?
Can I just plead yes to all of those? I mean,
fair.
Anybody who tries to write with other people is always opening themselves up to a bit of a hard time, because. But then the flip side is, that yes, it can be a challenge working with other people, but when you learn communication, when you and everybody else can talk to each other and say, look, this thing here is a thing that I feel really strongly about. I want to do this thing. And other people are like, and you're like, let me convince you. And also, what would you like to do? And you all put your ideas on the table and you hash them out and you go, oh no, we've got two major pools of ideas and we're going to commit to both of them. Oh, that's a terrible idea. But it's a challenge in a lot of different ways. The world building for me is a huge part of it. If you can negotiate a world with everybody else that you're building, and yes, it's so much easier to build a new component of the, of Mossflower, the continent, a new culture that exists in an area of Mossflower, the continent. It's a lot easier to build when you've already got restrictions in place. And if you can master doing that with other people, build things that you can write characters in that you enjoy, but provide space for everybody else to do the same. I think that's an excellent creative action. I like it. It's a thing I like to do. And I like to tell stories. Aldridge's story was surprisingly close to my heart. You know, he starts out with it all, and then it's all frickin' gone, and he just releases all of the catches to get it all back. And I think that's a story that, well, if you've watched John Wick, it wasn't meant to be a direct take on John Wick, but in some cases it kind of ended up a bit that way. Whoops. But there's a lot of other stories as well that follow that arc. And I think we all just want to throw a light on our own particular tiny corner of the human condition, because everybody's experience is different, so everybody has stories to tell that illustrate things just that little bit differently, and that expose another part of the human truth for consumption. And I've never sounded any more like a Guardian book club article in my life. But I will stand by those last two sentences, because I think they're true.
No, that's fair. It's absolutely fair. I have written in these contests myself on several occasions, and it is painful. It's stressful. It's your feelings get hurt even when no one's trying.
Yeah.
But the takeaway is amazing, because you do get to put yourself out there. And if you have the spine for it, I will say that up front. Not everyone can do a Survivor competition. It is hard, and if you're a sensitive person, you're not up for criticism of any kind. You're not going to have a good time, so don't do it. But when you do it, you take away so much from it. You learn to communicate with people in ways that you never thought you would have to. Like you're talking with people from all over the world, having to juggle time zones, having to juggle a million ideas, trying to put your character and your arc out there while showcasing you are a capable writer, more than capable, because you do want to win. It is a
That is the plan, so I've heard. I've never won one.
I haven't either, but that's okay.
Yeah. I would say it change at some point in the future, but I've written 20,000 words in the last year, so I'm not sure I'm going to be writing anything big anytime soon.
And that's fair. Writing takes a lot out of you, and that's one of the reasons contests are so exhausting. Or even fan fiction is exhausting. And heck, there comes a point in your life where reading becomes kind of tiring.
Yeah, it really does.
But I find with the contest, the Redwall Survivor contest, with the ROC, you do get that community backing, and it does inspire you to not only keep trying to win one of these damn things, but you also, if there comes a point where it's like, win or lose, I've learned something. Especially with MO4, that was my big thing. I just really wanted to have a good time. I just wanted to learn and do better and improve my skills. And usually these contests are a great way to do that. And
do you remember when we wrote that post together, you, me, and Dean? The one in the
triple post.
Yeah, the triple.
Yes, where we fought the
pangolin.
It was a pangolin. We wanted it to be an armadillo. But
yes. And they were like, no, armadillos are American. You cannot have. So we were like, okay. So what belongs to the main European landmass? Pangolins. Even. And I do remember people being visibly annoyed. We were like, we want to fight an armadillo. And they were like, you can't fight an armadillo. That's from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And we were like, okay. Well, this is on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. Past our restriction.
We found the loophole.
But I am very glad that we got that through, because the three of us collaborating on that. No, it was four, wasn't it? Because no, it wasn't four. No, I'm
No,
thinking
it
of
was
previous
a
collab.
Dean, it was Aldridge, it was Thrajan, and then we had an NPC, the hare, join us,
Who
the
died
boxer.
immediately. Yes.
Yes, she was quite delicious fodder.
Yes, everybody knew she was going to die immediately. I couldn't find any way of making it less obvious. It's just like, okay, let it ride.
Still,
But
it
yeah,
worked.
collaborative
It worked.
posts for me are the thing I like the absolute most. I really, really enjoyed writing that one.
Yeah, that honestly to this day is one of my favorite bits of writing that I've ever done. And it was certainly the best collaboration I've ever done. Not just because I had so much fun, but we got to do some crazy stuff in that one scene that we never would have gotten away with in any other contest.
Very true, yeah.
And not only that, but it was a great learning experience. We each learned, like, all the pieces were set up, and we managed to give our characters this wonderful arc through the story, and that was a turning point for me. So I actually got to accomplish a goal in that post, which is a big deal for someone who's not used to that.
Yeah, it can be so tricky, can't it? Because when you're writing collaboratively, sometimes you even forget to have goals.
Yeah.
Should I have something I actually want to get done here? You know, I've got so used to flying by the seat of my pants when it came to collaborative writing. You know, I would grab an opportunity if I saw one within the context of a single post to make a goal advancement.
Yeah,
Or
and
to see a thing. I was like, that I could take 2 steps sideways with this story and accomplish that thing there, which would open up this set of trajectories. And then I can pick one of those later on. Cool, I'll do that. And that's as far as I ever got to planning ahead.
yeah, because I mean, no plan ever stands up in the face of battle.
No.
And it is so
true.
easy when one of those contests, even when you're writing fiction, it's so easy to get lost in all the ideas and get sidetracked. And when you're collaborating with so many people, there's literally 100 ideas coming at you every single time you log in.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
It certainly can be, and it's hard to stay fresh, which is why those contests are really good for the ROC as a whole. I think they keep the writers on their toes, and they also keep us as readers and fans. They keep us sharp to look out for cliches and stereotypes, and oh, that story's been done 100 times. Oh, that story's been done 100 times, but now you've brought something new and cool to it. I'm going to appreciate this now. Like you pick up all sorts of stuff from either side. And it's very valuable, I find, what they contribute. And of course, the writers themselves are just amazing. The skill alone to not only make it into one of these things, but to even write one round.
Was it this was way back in the dawn of time. I think Redwall Online Community Survivor, the very first one, happened. It certainly happened before I was capable of writing anything decent. It might even have happened before I started in the community, but I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that when we put our heads together a couple of years ago, when we were talking about everybody who'd been in that contest, since the contest had completed, and this would have been nearly 20 years ago, every single one of them had become a creative professional in some form or another. What?
Doesn't surprise me.
All of them were either published or artists or something like that. You're like, that's intense. And I'm pretty sure we've had at least 2 published writers in every single Survivor contest.
Yeah.
Maybe not some of the smaller ones when there was that big flurry of them about 10 years ago, but definitely in the mainstream ones.
Absolutely. And it certainly goes to show that, like, the kind of people that join the ROC, very creative minds, and the whole community itself, it just nurtures that. And it's really something to be proud of, to be a member of this community and see, like, hey, I was part of that group that once upon a time said good job, and that person grew up to be like the next Stephen King, the next George R. R. Find out, oh, they grew up to be like a graphic design artist. They're a comic book artist now. They do special effects for like New Line Cinema. It's the whole atmosphere is so supportive and creative that for so many of us. I mean, who knows where we'd be without the ROC, really, without Redwall. Would we have found our way? It's very interesting.
And it even applies in other angles as well.
Oh,
I hadn't really
absolutely.
considered that, because one of my first engagements with the ROC really were, well, building forums, building websites, building places for people to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if I hadn't had that impetus right at the beginning, would I be where I am now? Which admittedly is, working a relatively faceless technical job in a relatively big med tech company. But still, would I be here? I don't know. Or would I have been dragged into being a dreary English literature professor? Oh,
Jealous.
no, I don't think I could deal with that.
Oh no, I want to be a dreary English professor.
I'm trying to remember what I was good at in school that wasn't affected by Redwall. I could sing. I could sing pretty well.
Well, there you go.
And I could sprint. And I could throw a mean javelin. And that's it. Those were my 3 skills.
So if we put you in a furry costume, you could be an extra in the background of Redwall cartoon.
I mean...
It's true, though. It's so true. Like, it had such a big impact on my life, the skills that I got because of Redwall and how they've transferred into my adulthood. Like, building easy boards, I learned HTML. And then, like, I'd write up the board coding in Word, and I learned how to use Microsoft Word and Office products really well. And when I got a job in a law office, all of a sudden, I was the tech person because I knew how to use a computer. Really, that's all it took. I was the Word girl. I could use Excel. And because I just took time to Google stuff, because I'd grown up with Ask Jeeves, and I knew how to work a search engine. And because I had moderated forums from time to time back in the roleplay circuit, and because I had collaborated on a Survivor contest or on these post-by-post role plays, I could communicate with people very well, both in person and professionally via, text writing, so like emails and letters and such. And those skills transferred really well, and I still use today. I got into food because I think there was a feast in the Great Hall, one book, and I was like, what the heck is this? I need to try this. And I made some horrible rendition of Strawberry Fizz.
Excellent.
October Ale, that's what it was. October Ale. Oh, God, I will never do that again.
Yeah, there's a, I forget exactly what it's called, but there's a sort of a Harry Potter themed thing in London. I think they call it the Experience, because they can't call it a theme park because it hasn't got any bloody rides. Kind of a topical fictional museum. And at the end, they're like, would you like a glass of butterbeer? Don't have butterbeer. Don't. It's awful.
Is it anything like buttered rum?
No.
Or rum butter, rather, that Christmas drink, where you have the rum and literally your grandma takes a dollop of butter and hucks it in and stirs it up till it's frothy, and it gives it to you, and you want to drink it, but it's horrible. And then you take a sip to be polite, and then it's got you, and you can't pull away, and your grandma's looking at you, and she's all happy that you're enjoying the drink she made, but it's horrible, and you're trying to keep it down, but your stomach wants to heave it up, and no, Nanny, no!
I can't speak to your rum-related traumas there, but spectacular. No, this was essentially, what was it? It was kind of a ginger beer ice cream float. That was essentially it. Only the flavour of ice cream was sort of a half-hearted attempt at toffee.
Oh, that's disappointing. They don't even try.
Yeah, no, it was not good. Not good. Don't do. But I can now that you've mentioned that, I can blame Redwall for one other thing that has definitely happened to me in my old age. I'm an absolute sucker for Old English botanical flavours. So I have in my gin cupboard. Let me see. I've got some elderflower gin.
Oh, very nice.
I've got gooseberry.
Ooh. So a lot of places in Ontario you can't actually grow gooseberry because they act as a vector for disease of oak tree population. So never really get any.
That's fascinating. I had no idea that. I've got a couple of other variations. There's a dandelion.
Oh yeah, anything dandelion's always.
Dandelion's so good. It's bizarre. Dandelion and burdock is
two flavors you do not see in Ontario unless you're like into foraging wild food gathering. Nobody wants dandelions. Nobody wants anything to do with burdock. And I swear to gosh, like burdock soup is really tasty.
Burdock soup? Oh.
Yeah.
I've only ever tasted dandelion and burdock in a sweet context. I'm not sure I could do soup.
It's you put a lot of sweet stuff in it, so like beets and what are they called? Carrots, I mean, go into it, but that's not what I'm thinking of.
Swede, radish, parsnip?
Parsnip, maybe? Is that the white-looking carrot?
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm thinking of.
The white-looking carrot.
It's not a carrot, but it looks like one, so there.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, soup is a low term because all the carbs in it does come out kind of mushy, but it is tasty.
It's more of a stew or a pottage.
A pottage, there you are. 7 days old. It didn't start this way.
Oh, I cannot imagine a burdock pottage 7 days old. That'd be alcoholic by that point. Whoa.
Oh, the more reason to drink it.
Strain it first, please. Oh. Shots, but I can't get the parsnip pith out of my teeth.
That would be me drinking right from the cauldron, spitting needles out.
Oh. Good lord. You Canadians are made of sterner stuff than us.
We're cold, we can't feel anything.
It's like, it's all numb anyway, it's fine. Oh, okay. That's a valid reason to do things.
Well, Nara, I'm gonna wrap this up, I think, but before we go, I want to ask for when you first came to the ROC, what was your first impression of the community?
Oh, good lord. I mean, when I first showed up in the ROC, I had several communities to pick from. Sea Warriors Battle Board was full of caffeinated idiots, and it was an awful lot of fun. The next page I think I came across was...
idiots, that's just the 90s.
Yeah. The next page I came across, I think, was Camp Willow. But I didn't ever really go to Camp Willow. It didn't...
I think I remember that one, and it was one I checked out, but I didn't join.
Yeah,
it seemed too established at the time that I didn't think I'd find a place. And I do regret that, but that was me at the time.
Yeah, it was very, very structured. I remember writing one or two things for it, but Fort Ruddler, that was a big one for me. Because everybody there was absolutely devoted to the craft. Like, it was quite frightening in some ways. You know, every post was 2,000 words.
Wow.
Every single one. Okay. But caring that much about what you were writing and really pouring everything into every single post made it really impressive. And for future as well. That was an interesting one. That was based in Redwall in the year 2500.
Yes, and I remember when I found it, you had to apply to join. They didn't just accept everyone.
Yeah, that was a big driver for me, actually. I remember writing out my application 3 times because I kept losing it. because of how web pages used to refresh and just lose absolutely everything.
Oh, yes. Back in the 90s.
That was painful. But I had some excellent times at Fur Future. I think I pulled together everything I'd written at one point, and Fur Future alone accounted for about 70,000 words over the course of 2 years.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, none of it was joined up, you know. These were the 1/8 of one particular ridiculously long thread that I'd written. But just imagine, you know, those stories you pick up on fan fiction websites and click it, and you're like, okay, the premise seems interesting, and then you accidentally spot the word count, and it's over 1 million words, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a hell of a read. Every thread on Fur Future was like that.
Yeah.
Every single one. And it was intimidating, but it was so good.
Yeah, that was a big one. That had such a huge membership too. It's weird when you think back and you're like, how did it ever fall out of favor? It was so popular, but
well,
so it goes.
All of the old guards switched out at the same time. All of the people who had, you know, really kept the momentum going all suddenly found that life was, well, basically they all graduated.
Yeah. And that tends to be the way with the...
If 80% of your primary writers all graduate at the same time, that's it, you're dead.
Yeah. That was a problem with a lot of the ROC boards back in the day. The roleplay boards, mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fort Tatarack, the Long Patrol, Redwall Beach. I think Dab's still around. Dab is
still around. That is true. Yeah, they've got a Facebook presence and everything.
Yeah, I think they still have a forum too. And there was another website. It wasn't a roleplay one, but it was like an art thing on say Tumblr, Twitter. It was Mossflower. And it was all Redwall fan art that people could contribute to, and it was going really strong, but it wasn't depopulation. And the age that took it out was the bloody coronavirus that stalled operations there.
Oh wow! So that's quite a recent casualty.
Yeah,
and it might very well still come back as soon as the.
I hope so. As
soon as the global panini is done with.
Yeah, I really hope so, because this was a very active blog. I was very happy to see it. There was a few old names that I recognized on it, and I really hope it too. The new Netflix production is gonna stir up a little trouble in the ROC again. Like we mentioned last time, I really am banking on it breathing fresh life into the ROC. And can't wait to see all the new fan art and fan fiction we're gonna get.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like a second helping of cake. Oh yes, please.
Second helping of cake, 20 years after the first helping of cake. Brilliant.
It's a fruit cake. It's fine.
It's a fruit cake. They last. Huh. Yeah, it sounds much like my grandmother's approach to the things in her pantry.
Oh gosh, Nanny, no!
Nana, this custard, it's fine. It's powdered custard. It went off in 1973.
Oh gosh.
It's fine. No, it's not. I'm throwing it away.
God, you didn't use it since the 70s. You're not going to use it now. Throw it out. Oh gosh. That's happening. I'm calling that now. Next Survivor contest, one of us is in that scene where we blow our cover.
Fantastic. So probably the last pocket of the ROC I came across. I mentioned Fort Ruddler, didn't I? Yeah. Fort Ruddler and Fur Future were both where people... Oh, and a website called the Silver Garrison. And those three were all places where people really, really pushed themselves for the art, for the writing itself and nothing else. You know, there was... It was wonderful, but also you were missing some of that casual interaction. And then I finally came across to Rouge, which I ended up in charge of for a short while. God help them. And that was completely different again. And I mostly kind of didn't like it, actually. Not when I first started there. But that was because I was a Brit and there were loads of Americans. And not only was I a Brit, I was also a very left-leaning Brit. And an absolute contrary little sod. So I was a nightmare. The forum records, in some ways, thankfully lost to time, but sadly lost to time, would have corroborated that I was an absolute menace for my first couple of years. But they had writing competitions, small ones and big ones, and they started up the whole Questers Bold series. And and I got to run Questers Bold 4, and that was a lot of fun.
You ran Questers Bold 4?
Yeah, that was me.
I don't think I recall that. I'm sure you've told me over the years. What was your pen name back then, if I may ask?
It was usually Kate Cheverst. The characters, because I did have a couple of characters to help establish Questers Bold 4, were Phalantia and I can't remember what his name, what the younger one's name was. I think he died in the tunnels anyway. But I very deliberately, my character was there to antagonize the situation, and then he just wasn't really there after that. And it was just being behind the scenes, keeping the authors communicating with each other, getting everyone to come up with a trajectory. The gunpowder wasn't my idea; it was theirs.
It's fantastic. Actually, Questers Bold.
Everything about it was theirs. Literally, all I did was go. You've got two cities that are at war with each other, and you've just got stuck in some mines. Go.
That's fantastic. Questers Bold 4 was actually my first Questers Bold tournament that I witnessed in real time. So that one's actually very dear to me.
Oh, fantastic! I'm very glad.
I was a lurker. I did a little fan art, and I think once upon a time there was Tomo Treble who was submitting music left, right, and center, and I think I got my hands on the old Audacity piano program back in the day and dabbled a little bit in that. But that was a good contest, and that was one of those contests that was very popular too.
From what I remember, it did pretty well. I mostly remember wrangling the writers and having to defend our artist for drawing the squirrel warrior lady.
Oh yeah, the cleavage, Selena Moonbeam or something.
Moonspeaker. Yeah, and it's contentious.
That was weird. I thought of all communities, the Redwall community would not be bothered by that. You never know. You never know.
That was also coincidentally the year that I went to university, and I was a complete shut-in because I was running QB4.
Yeah, wow. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work just to write in those. It's amazing that you managed to run one while going into secondary education.
Well,
fantastic. I feel like I just relearned some lore.
You did. I am part of the lore. I was in Questers Bold 2 as well.
Oh, okay. So that one was before I hit up to Rouge. I remember Questers Bold 2. I think Karn was in that one. Yes, Karn the Hedgehog. Yes. Longtime member of the ROC. I remember the artist actually ticked off a lot of the writers in that one, completely contrary to the other one. But yeah, all these contests, it's funny, they have a lore even long after they're all gone and forgotten, and not forgotten, but there's hardly any records of them any longer.
Yeah. I technically have Questers Bold 2 in text files somewhere on my machine.
I know the Redwall Survivor fanfiction page has some of the old, obviously Mossflower Odyssey. I think it also has some Red Venture and one of the Questers Bold, I want to say.
I think Questers Bold 1 was, or QB3 maybe, was recovered a while ago because some enthusiastic fan saved all of QB3 in Word format on their computer.
It's fantastic.
I think it's around for 15 years. What? Okay, 10. I think it's about 10 since QB3.
It's amazing that not only did they save it, but how many computers have I gone through lost so much of my work, that they managed to save it, preserve it, and pass it on.
Yeah, so much of what I've written is long lost. I think if I go into the right folder, I will find a single Word document with a list of all of my characters that I ever wrote. And for almost all of them, there is nothing left anywhere. Which is kind of depresso, but also okay, because it was the journey.
Yeah.
Each of those characters was me learning something else about writing. And I'm pretty happy with where I am now, so...
That's part of the creative process is eventually you're going to wind up with a graveyard imagination. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, graveyards are a perfectly fine place to go and have a picnic and reminisce. There's absolutely nothing wrong with losing stuff or abandoning it. But yeah, it is weird to see, like, to go back. I was in, what was it? The Emperor's Decree, the first one.
And yeah,
I think that's
Gunnar,
also,
weren't you?
Yeah, Gunnar. See, really, really grumpy fox that didn't contribute anything except well-timed scowls.
Well, they can be critical. I think you got to, like, you got
4 or
in
5. Yeah.
the 4th. Yeah, so clearly they're fairly important to the story.
Yeah, it was okay. But yeah, I don't have anything, but I think it's on the Redwall Survivor fanfiction page. Somewhere out there, somebody has my writing that I don't have. Oh my.
Yeah.
Weird,
That's
like,
isn't it?
It's part of the fantastic. The ROC is like, we've been building this world for decades, and it's just evolved into this crazy crypt of creative minds and nostalgia, and then the new stuff that's piling on top of it. It's beautiful. Like you said, sometimes it gets really sad, but for the most part, it's just, isn't it fantastic to go back and look at what we did, and then to turn around and say, oh my gosh, there's so much more to do.
Yeah. I would love to know one particular number. I would love to know how many words of fiction the ROC wrote in total. It has written so far in total.
Trillions.
Because it's going to be so much.
I just, like, one post of a Mossflower Odyssey contest is disgustingly long. We're talking like 5,000 words, maybe.
And
then you have 10 people doing that for 10 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, QB4 had... there was one minus side for QB4, and that was that the first round was 2 weeks? Yeah, so there was a grace round, and then the first round was 2 weeks. And in that round, I think they wrote a total of 180,000 words between them.
Yeah.
And everyone was just looking at it going, you mean I have to read all of that before I can vote? That's 3 novels. Like, yeah, it is.
That's when you start voting off people out of spite.
You wrote 13,000 words that I had to wade through on a Wednesday afternoon. They were perfect, but I hate you.
How dare you entertain me with all this imaginative, mystical scripture? Bah!
Oh, God. Yep. There was just one more thing I wanted to mention. Going back to that collaborative post that the 3 of us wrote back in...
I really do enjoy that. I really did enjoy that. And I gotta say, before I forget, I really enjoyed the audience reaction to that one, too. It was good testament to our good work. One of those moments you get to feel proud.
I don't think there was a negative review for it. I think the only negative thing anyone had to say was how obvious it was that NPC Boxing Rabbit was going to die. Like, yeah, that's fair, because she was. But the thing I really found interesting, I really enjoyed about that, was that the 3 of us have completely different writing styles. Not only in terms of the words we put down on the page, but how we get there as well.
Oh, truly.
Because we're
all pretty familiar with each other at this point, but that is such a good point. We're so different in style.
Adine was meticulous, Her author wrote would write outlines. They'd plan paragraphs one by one. They'd, come up with first a watercolor wash, and then details, and then more details, and then all of a sudden everything would just take form. You'd be like, well, how did that happen? And then there was me just sitting there going, right, I'm just going to hammer out 2,000 words and see what happens. And by and large, it was okay, but,
As
I
you do,
tend to be the sort of person who writes 2,000 words, throws 1,500 words away, writes another 2,000 words, and then they're happy with it.
Yeah, if I'm given free reign, I end up writing draft after draft after draft, and I call them all my rough drafts, so nothing really gets done in the end.
Yeah.
But that collaborative post was probably a highlight of my time in the ROC. Not just because I was so proud of it, but yeah, I worked with two fantastic writers with completely different styles, completely different characters, completely different goals and arcs in mind. All of us competing against each other, but simultaneously able to cooperate completely to come up with a fantastic chapter. And
I'm going to have to go back and read it again,
I like that one. I mean, personally, I'm very proud of it, not only because, it was really fine writing, and also just, I feel like while I was writing it, it was improving. It wasn't just because I had to impress two other people, but these two other people, yourself included, were encouraging me and offering suggestions and constructive criticism, and just such a good experience. I was so open to it all. And by the end of it, by the end of that post, even minutely, I feel I came out a slightly better writer. And also, I mean, I got to, stab a pangolin through the gut. That's always fun.
Dab time! Because of course.
I won't become the Black Whiskers. I won't become the Black Whiskers. I won't become the Black Whiskers.
Oh, what did you say here? That lots of people are baying for me to do a horrific violence. Well then, time for horrific violence. Oh, what fun! I've just found the fanfiction .net entry for Mossflower Odyssey 4, but it looks like that's only got round 1 in it. So, oh well. I'll see if I can
sure, it'll be updated.
Yeah, it'll show up at some point.
Yeah. We did fall prey to COVID for Mossflower Odyssey 5, but I'm sure when Mossflower Odyssey 5.5 shows up, the rest will be updated.
Yeah, and I think there's story to be told in MO5. I think we're at the point where it can't possibly take the same form as it did before COVID hit, but I definitely think there's story to be told there.
Absolutely, there's tons of good material for it, and there's lots of people, as we know, that are willing to take that material and weave a tapestry out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I still want to see more of Old One.
Oh yeah, Old One was fantastic. And shout out to Gray for QQ.
Yes, how can we not?
Me some QQ.
Oh yeah.
Now, we've each shared some of our experiences entering the ROC, and that was at least a decade ago for me, possibly more than 2 decades ago for you. Do you have any advice for these newcomers to the ROC? We see people, in the past couple of years, 1 or 2 will pop up. We'll get a good year. We'll get 5 new members. And now Netflix has come out with this announcement. And the old ROC is stirring up again, and we're hoping for new members. Do you have any helpful advice for these newcomers that maybe have never experienced this kind of online community before?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay, so there's one thing that I guarantee you that we do that we don't mean to do, and I guarantee you that we have inertia. As the old guard, we will have so much inertia. And what that means is, we will have spaces where we're like, come on, come in, it's excellent. But actually what will happen is those spaces won't really respond to the new energy. Certainly not as much as new people are expecting. So I think my first bit of advice, first thing to say would be, don't be afraid to carve your own space. Absolutely do not be afraid to do that. if you and 3 other people all hop on at the same time, and like 2 of you have this idea for, I don't know, just 2 of you have an idea that bounces off season 5 of the TV show, whatever season 5 ends up being. Not season 5, episode 5. You get my drift. Then go and do it. Absolutely do it. And never ever trust a member of the Old Guard when they say they'll have time to help. Because as much as we desperately want to see and be part of an ROC revival, I guarantee you none of us has as much time as we think we do. Absolute guarantee. You know, time gets lost. You think, yeah, sure, I'll have a couple of hours free a week to clock in with this thing, but every single week something else comes along and takes up that time. And before you know it, it's 3 months later and everybody else has gotten bored and walked off. And you're like, oh, I killed it. Whoops. Mm. So definitely my advice to fresh blood is absolutely don't be afraid to carve your own space.
Yeah, get involved.
And yeah, you know, consult the elders by all means, but don't let us tell you what to do, for heaven's sake.
I don't know what I'm doing. I ain't gonna help you. I jumped off the bridge, man. Come on
especially
down, the water's fine.
Especially don't ask the people who have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, it's true. But it's good advice. If you don't get involved, people are gonna walk away. So yeah, when you come in, carve your own space. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think I've seen attempted revivals, and it was especially obvious with Tarouge, but also with a couple of other sites that I used to be part of. Black Arch Fort was the spiritual successor to Fort Ruddler. And they had fantastic activity for about 2.5 years, and then it dropped off because, again, everyone graduated. And they kept being like, yeah, let's launch a drive and try and get some new members in, because there's still people in the ROC, you know, they're just not here. So let's drag them in and get them interested. And you would, and you get a few enthusiastic newbies, and they'd engage with the Old Guard. And then the Old Guard would be like, oh, wait a minute, I've got to spend the next month building a new house. Sorry. And that would be it. The newbies would be off doing something else and having more fun. And yeah, that happened quite a few times. So I think the antidote really much is don't listen to the old guys.
I hope. I mean, it's yeah, it is true. But I do hope. I do hope with the not only the advent, but the common possession of cell phones and internet's all over the place now. You go on the street, you can siphon Wi-Fi off Tim Hortons or Starbucks or what do y'all have over there? The Queen's Donuts? I don't know what you eat.
We do have Starbucks. They do have internet. We generally don't trust it.
The Queen's Starbucks internet? Yeah, everyone who has a cell phone.
Starbucks have no royal appointment to the Queen.
I don't think so. They don't have the crown on it anyway. But
exactly.
With
they
cell
don't have
phones,
hallmark.
with cheaper laptops, with cheaper and accessible internet, I hope this helps with the stagnation because, yeah, I mean, and I've done this myself. It's terrible. We're all guilty of this. I've disappeared for a week, 2 weeks. I've gone camping for like a month and I'm gone. Whatever project I was on was obviously stopped right then until I come back and I find, okay, interest has waned. But say I'm not camping for a week. Say I'm just really busy at work. I can glance down at my cell phone and see, oh yeah, so-and-so posted on that thing. I'll give them a thumbs up. I'll say, hey, good work. Try working on this or something instead, right? So there's less participation, but still contribution, still a presence there. I think that's present. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We can still maintain a presence even though we're not fully participating.
Yeah,
I hope
think
that helps. I really do hope that helps with the new generation. Just the new tech we have and the way the world works now, it's so different. The internet is not the same internet it used to be back in the 90s.
Yeah, and there's another thing to that as well. It's the we've got almost a complete absence of centralized communities. It's all on Facebook now.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine trying to sustain a 140,000 word role-playing game about future animals with cybernetic implants that turn them into improbable gymnasts and killing machines. This was just one of many for future threads. I can't imagine trying to keep that going on Facebook, especially not with, the fact that you just don't actually have control over which posts you see and when.
Yeah.
That can't work. We've got to make sure there is a space available and usable and partitionable for people to be part of when they get here. Because without that, we'll fall prey to the algorithm.
Yeah.
And the algorithm says, I'm pretty sure I can get you to get angry and argue with people over what color Crocs should be. So I'm going to try and do that instead of giving you that post back that you clearly wanted to read more of.
And that's a good point, too. That is a very good point. Like I said, the internet isn't at all. And Facebook, sure as heck, is not adhesive, or it's not conducive to the old ROC community style.
Yeah,
it's definitely either we change or we get people back on forums or we find a middle ground. And Discord's okay for that. There's not a lot of roleplay going on in Discord. Again, you have that whole things get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Same with Facebook.
It's tricky because Discord's like... You remember I mentioned Sea Warriors Battleboard with that really old message board tech?
Oh, yeah.
Discord is kind of like that, sped up to real time. It's not like PHPBB sped up to real time. And that, I think, is what we need to see. We need something that is a bit more complex than Discord as it currently exists. So it doesn't just let you set up a bunch of channels, each of which have chronological order, and that's it. You've got to be able to have threads for different things. Imagine that your channel list reordered itself as people posted new chapters to new stories. And that each of the channels that they posted their stories to, only they could post their stories to. Or only the people subscribed to be in that particular thread could post new chapters to. So there you go, all of a sudden you've got the concept of properly subscribing again, like you did back on PHPBB. And we need those ideas back, I think, because otherwise it's all going to go a bit wrong. But on that topic, Redwall's Survivor has its message board, of course. So that's a natural landing point if we can push that up the the old Google SEO search results. just push it up to the top and make sure that people go there to start, or somewhere like it.
Google and bribe someone.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, good points. Really good points. For the newcomers, I just want to say, get involved. We need you, and more importantly, we want you there. And we want your fresh ideas, because this is a community that has been waning, but we're on the rise again. And if you catch this wave now, if you contribute to it now, you could be a part of something very special to you in the future. And you can pick up skills, you can make new friends. And even if you don't want to contribute, you just want to hang out with people, absolutely come down, because the community is fantastic. We are absolutely welcoming people. And whether it's on our Discord or a forum or even a Facebook page that isn't affiliated with Redwall Survivor or Mossflower Audio, that's okay too. we gotta stay connected somehow, and we have the opportunity now to find a new way to.
Yeah,
I think it needs to be done.
And I think the ROC is one of those few places that I would say it has the potential to be your creative home. An actual place where you genuinely want to go to kick your feet up and just write some, I don't know, some silly story about a rat kid and a mouse kid playing hide and seek in Redwall's orchards, or whatever else you want to write, man. Whatever else. You could write a geologist's guide to the southern versus northern slopes of Salamanderstrom, or an atlas. I'm pretty sure we've already got an atlas. But there's a lot. There's so much to do, and there's so much to elaborate on, and there's so many places for characters and cultures and whatever the hell you want to write to go. This absolutely has the potential to be a creative outlet and a personal outlet that feels like home.
Absolutely.
Because that was to me for a long time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of us Guard are still kicking around. It's just there's something about it that there's the nostalgia, and then there's something deeper there. There's a spiritual connection to Redwall and the RO community. Yeah, growing up, I didn't actually have a whole lot of friends until I got to high school, but I did have the ROC. After school, I could go to Redwall Beach, and I did have friends there, and I could play with them. Not in the conventional way, but it was still something, and it was great for me. The ROC offers so much to everyone, so it's important to me. I think it's important to a lot of us, and I think newcomers, like you said, have this opportunity to come in and find an importance, to find a connection with.
Yeah. And to create.
Absolutely.
I think it's just incredibly important sometimes to knuckle down and go, you know what? I am going to write a 12,000-word treatise on exactly how you make a sword for a mouse. Or what kind of technologies do mice actually need in order to be able to sow and harvest wheat? Because wheat is a lot bigger than a mouse. It's important.
It is. It's very
world
important.
building. It's also wildly pedantic, but hey.
That's the beauty of it.
That is the beauty of it. You are just allowed to be utterly pedantic whenever you like. Brilliant.
Well, I think we firmly established the effect that the ROC and Redwall has had on us. It has been substantial, and I'm really glad that we actually got to delve in and discover this fantastic relationship that we have with this wonderful fictional world, and its absolutely real and evolving community. So thank you so much, Nara. Would you like to say goodnight to everyone?
Good night to everyone.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm always happy to have you on. Thanks for
Excellent.
everything.
It's been an absolute pleasure to join in.
Absolutely. And of course, there's always going to be around the ROC. You just got to hunt down. Usually you can find them near me. We're pretty close. I
have been known to follow you around. Yep.
Yeah, I'm usually singing some inappropriate song while Nara cringes. Good.
That has definitely happened.
But we're both on Redwall Survivor if you want to say hello. Hi. So thank you, Nara, and to the ROC, to the listeners who are thinking about joining the ROC, and to those who are just Redwall fans, thank you very much for listening to FOXPENMANSHIP. You have a fantastic day. Cheers.
Cheers. Have a good one.
So I am sitting here now with the one and only Matra of the ROC. You may know Matra because of course, they are a multiple-time Mossflower Odyssey competitor, and of course, everyone's favorite crazy shrew winner of MO2, Salazar. Welcome, Matra.
Thank you for having me, sweetheart. Happy to be here. Happy to talk with you today about all things ROC and what's involved.
It is absolutely fantastic to have you. You and I have been friends for a while now. We've been competitors side by side, and we've somehow thrown our friendship hats into the ring, so it is really quite honorable to have you here. I'm really glad that you can join me for this.
Well, this project is something that I immediately latched onto because, we have the board, we have all of our contests and writings that we put up, but really, this is a legacy thing. It's after hearing everybody else giving their interviews, I simply had to see what was cooking and give my own 2 cents.
Yeah, it's quite fantastic that I've had so much interest in it. So many characters of the ROC have come through the FOXPENMANSHIP door, and I mean, you're a brand new face on here, so welcome, and to the audience, you are honored. Know that.
Oh, goodness. The weight. How could I stand up straight anymore?
Pressure. But Redwall is something special. It does bring us all together. For whatever reason, the series is charming enough that it can entrap us all together, and that's fantastic. I'm actually going to start by asking you, of course, what's your favorite Redwall book?
Oh, my favorite. When we were chatting before, you had mentioned that, well, most people know immediately, and for me, it was also a snap of the fingers. It's The Bellmaker. We're talking Southward, we're talking Castle Florette, we're talking Han Rosie. I will fully admit that I have not read the book in a very long time, but when someone mentions Redwall out of the blue, if I don't think of the ROC first, I think immediately of The Bellmaker. Kind of like the whole history within the history angle of it,
Yeah, it's also a very important book to the lore. I mean, everybody knows. I pronounce it Merrill, even though I think it's pronounced Mariel, but Mariel of Redwall, and then of course The Bellmaker is it's one of those lore world building books where there's so much history into it that you almost have to read it.
Yeah, and I think that's why I liked it so much, because it really gave a look into the foundation of the first books, like what made their beliefs, what made all of these characters hold so close to what Redwall embodied, and seeing it in action, seeing the history of it really, really sunk in deep with me. It wasn't my first book, but it was the one that really resonated with me as I read through the series. I still, as we're talking, I'm looking at my bookshelf, and the whole top row is full of the Ace Trade paperbacks down through the years. The Bellmaker one, the spine is not faring too well, but the others are just fine.
Those are the ones with the gold foil on the spines?
They're kind of not gold foil. They usually have a single color. The paperbacks, I can send a picture at one point, but full
I see. I've Googled it. I know the ones. I have a few of these in my collection. I have the I don't know. I think it's the Canadian or the American covers for the most part, where they have that nice gold foil spine, and the moment you open the book, it gets ruined.
I've noticed that with a couple of the hardcovers as well. They don't endure because there's so much work and tooling in the illustration, but that's part of the majesty.
Oh, I know. It's especially my copy of Madame Mayo is actually literally falling apart. The glue is just a memory holding the pages to the spine, and there is no foil along the spine anymore. There's just a very faded picture of Slagar the Cruel looking very sad and lost.
Oh, poor dear. Won't somebody love him? No.
Well, I did. I read that book to death. Literally, it's dying. Oh, but yeah. So what was your first Redwall books? I read Redwall. That was my first book. I saw a trailer for the cartoon on the Cartoon Network way back in the day, and I said, that looks up my alley. And I went to the library and I found a book and I read it, and then that was it. I was hooked.
I had the same experience with the show after the fact, though. I didn't find Redwall. Redwall found me.
That's the Abbey life.
It really is. It was very much a calling. It's not exactly the funnest or nicest story, but it was the end of elementary school, beginning of middle school. I'm terrible with dates. It all kind of blurs back to me because of memory problems. But I had just gotten into a fight with one of the kids on my baseball team, and I had ran off before the assistant coach could catch me. And in running off, I snuck into the school the side door was still open, and we were practicing on a Saturday. And I hid in the library. And while I was hiding in there, I looked through all the stacks because I've never been in there. Up until that point, I was kind of a rough and tumble kid. Boy Scouts, sports, schoolyard brawls, all the fun like that shows up in 80s comedies. And I saw the cover of the hardcover of the original Redwall, and the image burned into my mind. It's the ramparts of the Abbey, and there's some mice along it, and if you cover, it runs from front to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the, I don't know if it's one of the original printings of it, but I saw that and I immediately grabbed it off the shelf and took it home, which is stealing, but I did come back to properly
I mean, your life of crime was already well on its way. You'd committed assault, you're evading the law. You might as well steal a book at that point.
Let's put it this way. I stole the book, read it cover to cover, and then got inspired to take it back, which is the wholesome element of the story.
And that is, yeah, that's great. That is good.
That's the nice part. But yes, that
Community service, no jail time. Community service.
Yes, they took my young little self and put him on the side of a highway to spear trash and get milkshakes thrown at me by truckers. Yes. No, I returned it. The librarian was very confused, and I just checked it out again and read it again. And from there, it was just kind of hand over hand. I grew up in the 90s, so right at the cusp of, like the mid-early 90s. So right at the cusp of the home internet, like AOL Instant Messenger, everybody getting their discs in the mail.
Oh, yeah.
And, oh, yeah, I probably still have a stack of them in a basement somewhere, convinced that they'll have worth or use at some time besides making a collage.
I admit, I do have a shoebox full of old floppy disks that I will never be able to use again.
I know, right? Like, I was making a computer, and they had optical drives and all sorts of extras, and I'm like, oh, I might need this one day. Yeah, I'm going to need that 5 megabytes of documents I have on a floppy disk in the back of my closet. No.
Yep.
No.
I wouldn't want to look at the files anyway. The writing that I know I've kept, or the drawings, are probably shameful. They're probably just so terrible. It's best to forget them.
Honey, I feel the same way about looking at, like, MO1.
What? MO1 was art!
It was science and art. Yeah, but oh gosh, I got off on a tangent. In the early days of the internet, of home internet, for one of my birthdays, my family got like the family computer and the internet package that tied up the phone lines that everybody had. So you really had to time your usage, or else you got booted off by some aunt or uncle calling.
Of course, and every time you tried to download an image or even connect to the internet, you'd hear the screams of the dead.
I remember the first time I put in, you would hear it, but I had headphones for the first time, and I thought I was dying. It was so loud and so unnatural that I threw them off and ran from the computer room. It was terrible.
And thus ended your cyber hacker career in crime.
Well, for a while. One crime leads to another as my character. Wow, I just realized now that all of my characters and MOs were criminals. Oh. That's something to explore later. Anyway.
Most of mine were birds. We could talk about that weirdness.
It's not weird at all. Lou was beautiful. Lou from MO2, by the way.
Do love Lou.
For those who haven't read it, so everyone. Go read MO2. It's interesting.
It's there.
It's there. Anyways, tangent aside, we got the family computer. One of the first things I did, because through school, we got home computing classes, typing, here's how you use HTML, et cetera, and my parents were factory workers, so they thought the computer was straight magic. So I was setting up, and one of the first things I typed in once I got connected into, Google wasn't, what was it? Ask Jeeves or Metacrawler at that point.
Jeeves, yes.
Alta Vista, one of those, was Redwall. That was one of the first things I typed in, was just a search for Redwall, and I found the beauty of message boards, or the horror, if we're going to go back and look at any of the contents therein. Oh, goodness. I don't want to continue along this path to get on too much of a tangent, but yes, met a lot of people, did a lot of things, ran some communities, and eventually ended up on the Survivor board. But that was many, many years later.
Yes, wow, I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. Like the ROC, I'm pretty sure, like the golden years of the ROC was right in those early 90s with the internet finally being accessible on the home front. And that's how so many people wound up, like as you said, the first thing they punch into, Ask Jeeves.
Oh, Jeeves.
I miss Jeeves. He was the best. He knew everything. One of the first things a lot of people punched in was Redwall. And it's amazing because it doesn't seem significant at the time. There you are, some like scruffy little wet behind the ears kid just sitting at a computer where you don't even really know the power of this thing in front of you. And you just, hey, let's look up that cool book I read about, like mice and armor.
Oh yeah, looked up the mice and armor. I found goodness, Quester's Bold, I think, was going on at that time.
Quester's Bold off to Rouge, I believe the first one was run.
That's right.
That was their house brand.
One of my closest and best friends, Zevka, who was in MO1 and many others, MO2. Their history is fantastic, but I met him through the first role-playing message board I found, which was ran by my soon-to-be first girlfriend, and then I applied for Quester's Bold 1 with an application I remember the details of, but will not share for the life of me.
Let them lay on the floppy disk.
Yeah, it's going to stay on the floppy disk because I remember the comments thread, and they were 100% right, but boy, was I lanced from heaven. Felt like a hot tungsten bolt through my skull. Didn't dissuade me, though. Encouraged me to try harder.
That's good. Yeah, I think my first writing was it wasn't a contest, so I got lucky. But I had I was on Redwall.com or whatever, the old Redwall website, and I saw the sellers, and it had the recipes from some of the Redwall books. It was just a fan that submitted these recipes, and they were part of this website. And it was Redwall Beach, and I was like, oh, let's check that out. Maybe they have more recipes. I didn't know roleplay forums were a thing. I didn't know post-by-post stories even existed, and then I hit that link, and all of a sudden there I was in this new magical, mystical world, and I had no intention of leaving anytime soon. And yeah, so I started I came up with a character.
Was it a bird?
No, actually, no. Worse. It was an Arctic fox.
That's not worse. I think everybody, whether you're in the furry community or the Redwall community, at one point looks at a fox and goes, I can do that.
Yeah. And she wore a kilt of furs and had a double-headed axe, and her name was Softbrush, and she never did anything but sing and intrude upon other people's threads. But it was good. It was good.
Was that the same character you looked at the community I ran for a very short time?
Probably. Very likely. She was my first, and I mean, I wasn't very good at it, but I did tug her around everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you glom on to the names and you use them as an identity as you go from community to community. I did much the same with my first characters as well.
Yeah, I once I jumped to a different board. That's when I started using the FOXPEN name because I realized maybe I shouldn't have the same name for every, or rather, it would be easier to have the same name for every single board. My friends would recognize me.
Oh yeah, I think we all go through that stage as well. That we make our first characters and then we try to reinvent them numerous times on different boards, and then we settle into an overt moniker and try to go back and like, oh, okay, those were just practice runs. So let's just ignore those. This is who I am now. That's a big discussion in itself. The stake of identity and creative role playing, whether it's through Redwall or anything else. But I don't want to drag us too far from the point.
No, but it is possibly another episode. Take notes. Scribble. But yeah, I mean, that is how I started writing, and that's how you wound up writing creatively. And that is, it's one of the charms of Redwall. It draws you and it makes you want to be a part of this interesting community that has cropped up around it. Back when there were so many of us who had the time.
Oh goodness, the time. Isn't that the most astonishing part of this now, that we had to schedule this interview? There was a time where you just sat at that computer with your AIM friend list up, hoping one of the Linkin Park lyrics away messages went away so you could talk to your friends.
And there was always someone online. There was always, and all you had to do was send them a message. That was it. You were in a conversation, and then like 10 more people would join in, and such zaniness would go down.
Exactly. But to bring it back to Redwall, I think it was such an accessible point for creative roleplay when it was on message boards or through instant messengers. This might be a weird statement coming from me, but just because of the wholesomeness of it. It was simplistic. It was inclusive, even with the some of the notes of racism and speciesism throughout a lot of, especially the earlier works. There was still a place for everybody to connect and share. And that's something I've noticed through the ROC over the years, is once you start getting to know the people behind the characters, you see how diverse the writers are as a whole, which has been astonishing to me, that given the very Christian foundations of Brian's work and the very simplistic values that he brought to the table of, food and honor and friendship. Not saying simplistic's bad, but, just he kind of wrote, towards the end, he kind of wrote the same book over and over again.
Yeah, the fans caught on to that. But yeah, it's absolutely a great point. The fan community is just so diverse, and all that creativity concentrated in one place, from people from literally all over, and from all aspects of life too. There were little children on some of those forums. We had grown adults on those forums as well, and then everything in between. Just sharing.
Yeah, and sharing, developing into something else, long-term friendships, different projects outside the realm of Redwall itself. MO3, that was the one that had, Mossflower 3 is the one that had everybody meet up in a different state. Nobody lived in the same area, but they got together because of the contest for, I don't know if it was a week or a weekend. It turns into beautiful things. And again, that harks back to the wholesomeness of the source material, that everybody wanted to create and be part of a world that had clear lines and foes to overcome and heroism to enact. I think that's very precious. And I don't mean that in a condescending way when I say precious. Not like, oh, that's precious. No, it is precious.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is the one of the King Kong reasons to pursue any creative effort on side of exploring your own ideas and making a courageous stand. So yeah, I appreciate, as much as I'm not involved with the ROC now, I appreciate all of the facets and the parts I had to play in and the people I've met every day.
Absolutely. The connections are, I mean, there's something special. Very special. In fact, one of my fondest memories as a child was, well, I didn't have a whole lot of friends going to school. My real life, per se, was composed of like going to play baseball games that I really didn't want to go play, and then going to school where I was the token poor kid at a rich school. It wasn't fun. But I'd get to come home and I'd get to go online with this amazing new technology that we had, the internet. And I'd get to, socialize with people my own age and younger and older, and I got to socialize with them and learn so much about how the world works, how I myself am developing as a person. And I could learn amazing, just social interactions, how to pull them off, how not to be shy, how to gain some confidence, because everyone in the ROC, most interactions are extremely positive. It is a very supportive community, and it's very nurturing for not just the creative side, but the human side that's behind the screen name.
Absolutely, I agree, and I very much resonate with your experience growing up, because it was an avenue to connect in a time when we needed foundation. Maybe I'm assuming or presuming too much upon you, but it sounds like we had a similar upbringing, that there were some rough things. There was some vandalism or theft or working in and around the law for our own self-preservation. Maybe not in such specific terms, but certainly to the point where we needed a world we could explore on our own terms. And to mirror what you had said, in doing so, we found others doing much the same. We felt the connection. We felt seen, which is so important in any creative effort, in any community, that you can talk to one another. And even given some of my bad experiences and other MOs, the overwhelming majority of my interactions on the Survivor board, on any ROC venue, have been great. It's those wholesome memories that stay, of working on little extra contests or talking with someone over their project on the side, or just something as silly as how much yarn it would take to tangle up a snowy owl, which was a long and very sticky question that came up in MO1.
Shockingly relevant.
Yeah.
Yes, also how bad does a wing have to be broken for it to be useless?
Let's find out. Let's write it out in gruesome detail. The questions that nobody would ever ask before that point, but we were glad to explore.
Yeah, it takes you weird places. It does. But I mean, that's part of the supportive nature of the ROC. Not only are you seen, and I thought it was a really, really elegant way you put it. The ROC offers a place for people to explore the world on their own terms. It absolutely does. It's not only like nurturing, and it looks at you and it says, hello, I acknowledge you, but there's also a respect there, because so many of us could relate to what was going on in each other's lives, or because we'd simply talk about it. You didn't have someone to talk about it face to face, perhaps in your own life, but you go online and there's like at least one person who's willing to hear out your woes or what you're excited about, and nobody else likes about it. And from there, you're not only respected, but the confidence and the encouragement begins to grow, and you start to you experiment with your own limits. And this is how, like I mentioned earlier, the ROC got me into writing, but it was just for fun. And all of a sudden I saw these competitions starting to come up, and I saw, there's roleplay boards with application processes and word limits. I got to improve because I want to be good. And from there, once I set my mind to it, like, all you have to do is try, and there's someone in the ROC willing to reach out and help you with it. And whether it's just, discussing something that you have an idea for, or it's actually like, can you spag this for me? Is this a good idea? Is this stupid? Has this been done before? What do you think? Someone's willing to reach out and see you and see your work. And it's very magical almost.
That connection is priceless, and I had mentioned Zevka before, and I will probably do so 3 or 4 more times before this is over. But after Quester's Bold, that one I applied for, I didn't apply for any other contest for the longest time. A shattering of confidence as I just kind of drew back and ran through my familiar haunts. The board I was running at the time, some others my friends were running, et cetera, et cetera. And then MO1 was announced many years later. It was kind of a shot in the dark because I had taken my early experiences and the boards I'd run and kind of let them peter out in the mid-2000s, late 2000s. I sure hope my timing aligns, but my mind is not too sharp when it comes to dates. Anyways, oh, bless you.
Thank you.
In the late 2000s, I had kind of given it up. Mid and late 2000s, I'd kind of given it all up and was working on my own little stories and trying my darndest to get professionally published, like it would be some sort of validation, like it would be some sort of mark upon my existence that I mattered. Then MO1 came up, and the old feelings that we were just talking about came back. Like, I instinctually knew I didn't have that connection anymore. I was still friends with some people from the early Redwall stuff, Zebka in particular, and I bring that up because they came to my door and said, "This contest is happening. Why don't you try?" And I have to thank him in so many ways that I will not be able to for bringing it up, because I applied to MO1. I didn't make it. And when I didn't make it, he was there to say, "Hey, why don't you stick around and read and talk about what you see?" And that's what made the connections. In reviewing the contest as it rolled on, in supporting him as he played the character Zebka through MO1, and then in learning all the other people and personalities and finding the connection therein. It's my very long-winded way of saying, yes, I agree with you. It's those connections that matter.
Well, it's very important. Like, this is the bonds that hold the community and us together, right? You mentioned MO3, Treasure Captain Blade, I think that one was called. Mm-hmm. Some of the contestants got together and actually met up, and I remember I had just rediscovered the ROC after a small hiatus when MO1 started up, so I was just in time for that. I wrote the application at the New Orleans airport flying home to Toronto. And I wrote Nunahootin in 10 minutes and submitted him without spell checking and just hoped for the best.
Look at this fox who is openly stunting upon me no more than 45 seconds after I said, "Oh, I applied and got kicked out immediately." Goodness.
Lex. No, it's just it is a strange juxtapost, because you were part of the ROC, and I hadn't been a part of it for so long, and I just jumped in and I was like, I want to rejoin again, and I got lucky. You didn't. That's all it came down to.
No. We are not going to discredit ourselves in this house. This is what happened. You wrote it in 10 minutes. You love birds. You were feeling yourself, and everybody else could feel as well as they read the application. How about that one?
That works. But, I mean, I also, before that, I did have a little experience, so I was lucky that time, too. Because that's floppy disk time. That is luck.
Floppy disk time. Goodness.
Confidence.
Confidence. Vixen, confidence.
But it just, once again, I want to mention the connection that this crazy happenstance had. My 10-minute application landed me in a contest that I wasn't entirely sure I was prepared for because I hadn't written creatively in so long. And I remember I really enjoyed the character, but I didn't really know how to write a contest. And this is where your reviews really came in and helped. By the MO1 behind the scenes was probably one of the most enjoyable experiences I've been privileged to have as part of my involvement with the ROC. But MO1 mostly taught me how to try and write at a professional level. Whereas before I was just trying to be the best I could, but I didn't really have a goal. MO1, we got so much community involvement. There were so many reviews. There was such a great cast that we were all trying to help out each other. But by the end, we really weren't a competitive cast. We were kind of just, did we have to die? Can we just keep everyone as one big happy family and just keep writing a cool story and getting better?
Forgive me if I'm misremembering this, but Poco in MO1. Yeah, I know.
Still mourning.
It's still morning. You can see the picture. They're there. I'll send tissues your way. It'll be in the mail in 2 to 3 weeks. Poco from MO1, if I remember correctly, sacrificed herself. I don't mean just in the story, but in the writer's room because it made the most sense.
Yeah, it was the perfect end to a really fantastic character arc, and it did make the most sense for the plot at the time. And also, just I do think Poco was written by Vizon, and I do believe she was also. I don't know if she was having her first baby at the time or something was going on in real life that she thought, you know what, if I do this is not only best for the story, but it's best for everyone.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember the circumstances, but I do know at the time we all agreed, like, this is a great way to end the character arc. If you have to die, this is the way to do it.
And that just harks back to what you were saying, that MO1 was a pretty magical experience in that regard, that the community was involved, that the writers were all communicative and more interested in what's best for the story than anything else. And it really did play across in the reading as well, because I was very glued to it. There were nights when I had contestants that were still active sending me private messages 30 seconds after I'd post a review with questions, elaborations. What do we do? How do we move forward? And I'm not saying that to inflate my own ego. It's more just everybody wanted to do the best they can, and they wanted to connect. They wanted to make sure they could share their experiences and their characters and their ideas in the best way possible. And that sort of thing is only possible in this sort of writing community, with the wholesome focal point of the source material leading outward towards the earnest expression that the contest can yield.
Absolutely. And MO1 was special. It was a very healthy contest. Very healthy. There wasn't any real, personal drama going on between contestants at the time. Everyone was very lucky. We all got along. We were all rooting for each other because we wanted, if you can't hold up your teammates, you can't do it yourself. You can't write one of these stories by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, some Survivor contests in the past have not been healthy experiences for the competitors. And I mean, it's part of the game. It is, it's part of life in general. Not everything can go perfect all the time. And some contests have, especially back in the day during the fad, I'll call it, of Survivor contests, there were a lot that just puttered out into non-existence and they just collapsed. And
Yeah.
There's also times, though, where contests struggle, but they do make it to the end, but everyone walks away not happy with the experience. But simultaneously, it is, in the end, it is always a good experience because you take that, whatever happened that was negative, you take it and you learn from it. So
That was the point I was going to make. That everybody puttered out after 2 because of the setting, because of administrator fallout, because of conflict of ideas. But it finished, and then MO3 came, which, depending on your perspective, is the end all beat all of Mossflower Odyssey contests. That was the one that came through the strongest, had one of the best communities. Again, it's a matter of perspective, but that was one I didn't apply for and just reviewed for, and it was fascinating seeing all the different people come together. And it makes me think, is the point you bring up with, not all of them were healthy, and some of them putter out, and a lot of that comes down to communication issues. A lot of that comes down to in real life things. Not all of us will have the wherewithal like Poco did in the first one to say, hey, baby's coming.
Yeah.
Also, my character bleeping at this moment would be perfect. I don't want to spoil what happens to Poco. If anybody listening right now has not read Mossflower Odyssey 1, please do yourself a favor. I would say objectively it's not the strongest of all of the MO stories, but it is up there. The characters are interesting and varied, and it takes some wild turns. Goodness, does it take some wild turns.
That's just the published turns. There was some stuff going on backscene that we all collectively agreed, maybe this is too out of left field.
Wasn't there cannibalism considered at one point?
Oh, yeah, you know how Zevka, spoiler alert, Zevka throws the baby mole, Ruda or Bega, one of those guys, at the Snowy Owl. Originally, Nuna Hooten was going to eat the baby.
Which is perfectly valid for an owl, but a sentient owl and a sentient baby? Those are some mighty tough questions for a fun time romp through the snowy wilderness.
We also, we didn't really bring it up, but we did have a lot of discussion on does Nuna Hooten eat when he's not, saving everyone with the U-Guard.
Eat berries, right? And pastries constantly?
Yeah, don't worry, Gashrock, you're fine. You're fine.
Everything's good. We just left her in a snowy pile somewhere.
MO1 isn't the best, but it certainly was, I'd say, one of the most entertaining of the Survivor contest. I didn't apply for MO3. I actually I took a little hiatus again because college and university, and then I came back just as the contest was like 2-3 weeks in.
Mm-hmm.
And I read, and I lurked. I don't even think I commented much, if at all, on MO3. But it's certainly, like I said, it's like the flagship of the MOs. It's one of those stories where everyone came together and created something amazing.
Yeah, it created something amazing because I think the administrator's vision, Aaron, who still runs the board, the Redwall Survivor board at this time of the interview, his vision was very accessible, and everybody ran with it together. Again, we had some powerhouse representatives in the cast as well to help push things along. Vizon being one who deserves all the credit in the world. Thule at the time, who I don't think is still with the community, but he absolutely brought it. And there was some, I believe, some new fresh faces that were all in as well, but tangentially knew each other outside of it. Again, the connections. They're supposed to be anonymous contests, and they are, but the writers get to know each other over time, and bonds are forged in the drafting, which is quite wonderful.
It is. I've been on the ROC a while. I've known you. I knew you by name, and then all of a sudden MO1 comes along, and I was like, oh hey. It's guy.
It's that guy who. Oh, I remember what he used to write. Oh no.
But harkening back to the just creative juices that some of these contests bring in the community, the MO3 especially, the amount of artwork and craftiness, and there was even some music that was made. I think Bison put out more than 25 pieces of art, not including the cast icons, and
We had RFC members creating songs. I actually think Vera, I think it was Vera, correct me if I'm wrong, she started some stitch work and was creating hats and scarves based on the characters.
Yes, Vera made, Vera, who is Vera in MO3, made a hat for Thule, who was Thule in MO3, that looked like his character's hat. It was a patchwork, yard cap that was kind of big and floppy because Thule, the character, was a weasel who had a dent in his head and one of his ears was off, so he had a cap that was hang and compensate. And Vera created it and gifted it to him when they did the in-person meetup, or maybe she mailed it earlier. Either way, yes, there was so much crafting and so much artwork, and people had the space and inspiration to do so.
Yeah, and it's that one. The MO3 was fantastic for it. You go back to older contests too, and it's very much the same. Quester's Bold 4 is one of my favorites. I found Rouge just as it was getting going, and that one was actually run by Nara. I just discovered in a different time under a different name, but Quester's Bold 4 had Tumble Trouble making music theme songs for everyone. There was hundreds of people submitting art, fan fiction. There became a small role play that the fans had put together using their own characters trapped in the same minds that the cast characters were trapped in. And just people wanted to be a part of something that was so special to everyone. These contests, just Redwall in general, like you look at all the fan art that's been created, all the fan fiction, the games that have been created, just either indie games or fan games or something like the Mouse Guard, which is a little more mainstream. And of course, we now have a new Netflix cartoon coming out.
Was just about to bring that up because, yes, the difference between Quester's Bold and the scene they're in and the Redwall Survivor Board is very much numbers and timing. I would say the Redwall Survivor Board and even the MOs were kind of in the Silver Age when things were, I don't want to say dying down, but there was the Old Guard and there wasn't a huge influx of new people, more just word of mouth. Like, hey, you should try this. Hey, grab your friends and bring them to the board, which is great, made for great camaraderie. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing what changes when that new Netflix, when the spiel comes out, and who it may or may not inspire to join, because things are so different now. Us old farts talked about AOL Instant Messenger and posting boards. Will that even be a thing in the new generation? And I'm just going to immediately assume that there's going to be a new generation based off the Netflix stuff. Parents putting their kids in front of it because they think it's, quiet kid TV show, and then a snake bites a mole or a hedgehog. I don't know if they'll keep that sort of thing in, but still, there will be a new influx because of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Maybe other Survivor contests, maybe something new based on current technology that doesn't involve message boards. But
I wonder if there'll ever be a Redwall app. Because didn't websites got kind of replaced there by apps in a lot of cases?
Oh, I hadn't really considered that. How would you imagine that would work?
I have no idea. I imagine if I had to come up with a Redwall app right here, make it like D&D character kind of kit where you're like, what's your species, your alignment? Are you from the Abbey, Signinians, Long Patrol, Melkaris, some generic horde? What skills? Do you have all your teeth?
That would be pretty smart, like having a character builder, something you could write a bio, you can make friends lists through it, and having various links to resources or boards or different role-playing sites or servers where people could build their own stories. I'm afraid it moves a little too fast for my brain at this point, but
well, yeah, I mean, who knows what the new Netflix. I really do hope the new Netflix movie series brings in a fresh generation. We do know some kids that are already getting into it.
The artist Sandera she draws a lot of Redwall stuff for her son, even though she's never read the books herself. But she is aware of it. She knows her son likes it, and she's producing amazing artwork for it now. So, even people that have never heard of Redwall, but they like, hey, this lady does cool art, let's check it out. Or, hey, I'm friends with this boy whose mom does great art, let's see what's up. Why is it so special? I hope we're going to get that influx. I really do, because Redwall deserves the love, and people, I think, really deserve Redwall. I know that sounds corny, but it does so much for you.
Especially now, I'm not going to get into anything bleak about the current world state, but all the things that Brian went over in his work were explicitly meant for this day and age, about sharing, about opening up, about faith in others, and the connections built therein, and passing them down to your kids, your own kids, or through art or these interviews, is very important. And I'm so excited to see what's yielded because of it, because Lord knows I couldn't predict.
Who can? It's not like we had 2020 vision for 2020. That one. But yeah, we won't talk about that. It never happened.
Yeah, no.
But I guess even the show is kind of, I do forget sometimes. But FOXPENMANSHIP is about the ROC and Redwall, and it started as a Redwall Survivor show, and it's developed now into just a general ROC show. And there's people that I've never met before, and they're leaving comments on my videos saying, "Good work! Oh, I love Redwall." And their comments are leading me to other Redwall shows that are on YouTube. There's a fellow Jacob Oland. He does story time. He's reading The Legend of Luke, like chapter by chapter. He's done Mossflower already, and I think he actually did another. I'm not sure if it's a Redwall book, but if you have kids that don't like to read and you don't want them watching TV, there's radio shows out there. There's on the Brian Jack's read the Redwall books. There's people online that can connect to your kids because it's cool and it's online. There's so many options that people can use to connect in Redwall, and just to not only express their appreciation for the series, but also just be creative. I never would have had a show just reading a book. I'm not that brave, but at the same time, here I am talking to people from all over the world, listening to a different dude read one of the Redwall books. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and whoever is tech-minded out there or leadership able, the iron is about to be very hot for whatever app or way to join all of these experiences together. I had no idea. I'm not, full disclosure, I'm not very online. I'm kind of a dinosaur in some ways. Discord to me is a lot currently. And I had no idea that there were still people out there reading the books on YouTube or doing series along those lines. A central hub to just gather all of that and to be prominent and to have search engine optimization to be accessible for people looking when the Netflix stuff comes out. Now's your chance. Now's your time. You will get the support from all the rest of us.
And just even if you don't end up sticking around, or you grow up here and then adult life takes over, the skills and the connections you make in the ROC are lasting. I have friends that I've had for decades here, and my writing started out as just trying to string some words together into a sentence, but by the time I was in university and law school, I could not only write, but I could write very well. And because I had random moderator experience from the old EasyBoard days, from ProBoard, so I could make websites because GeoCities was a thing. I learned HTML because I wanted to make a Redwall website of my own. These skills that you get here and that people will help you with are very transferable to, I don't want to say real life again because it's all real life, but it's transferable to a career, per se, a job. We have people that have become professional artists because they started drawing Redwall. We have people that have become computer programmers because back in the day they really liked Muck and they started making their own websites. We have an amazing array of folks. Chefs, I gotta mention. Voice acting, oh good lord, yeah. Animators, authors, perhaps. Yeah, there's quite a few of us that I'm going to shout out to Christina from Redwall Beach. She is a freelance magazine writer, and she's actually got a really good article that I'm going to link to in the video about her experience coming into the ROC. And you can go from that link, and she's got articles about gaming, about news, virtual tech. Like it brings you everywhere.
I really want to hammer something home that you had mentioned for anybody listening who has ever had doubts about their worth or about what it means to actually spend time in the ROC. There might be points where you're like, oh, this is just foolish. This is just fooling around. It doesn't mean anything. Like so many things in life, it means what you put into it. And there are so many avenues and experiences you can have. Fox brings up that people have become programmers or professional writers. Let's see, I think Thule from MO3 now works on Redwall video games. Nara who played Aldridge in MO4 does voice acting. Myself, I have, because of my experience and all the things that Fox was saying about learning how to take criticism, learning how to work with other people, learning how to test your own limits and have courage and explore themes and ideas and characters in a safe space that you normally wouldn't in quote-unquote real life. I have professional writing credits. I'm working on my 4th book. It's almost done. I have these friends and connections that have shaped me into the creative person I am today. The creative and courageous person, which I think is the key word for these sort of communities. Courage to be yourself, courage to explore with the assistance of others, with the guidance of others if things go too far afield in one direction or another.
Yeah, absolutely well put. I actually forgot Thule was working on the Redwall. That's so exciting. I'm all excited again.
I know.
But it truly truly goes to show, like, this community is something incredibly special. I again, like, I took law, and so I was really good at writing essays, true, but at the same time, those social experiences I got helped me and continue to help me. It's so important for me to be able to communicate to the people I work with. I'm one of the few women Canadian forestry technicians. We're few and far between. It's getting better, but this industry is typically male-led, and there's prejudice there. And I have to be able to not only stand up for myself, but to maybe stand up for others, and to simply just know what my limits are. And this confidence that I have to be able to do that, the skill that I have to be able to maneuver sometimes complicated social situations, or even just to send an email to someone to say, hey, I saw what happened the other day. Do you want to talk about it? I wouldn't have had that, I don't think, unless it was for the I would have had a completely different mentality. And so it gives you the skills, it shapes you into something better if you want to be something better.
Yes. All it takes is a little bit of courage and courage to put yourself out there and to try some things and to test your own limits. And the lessons and the skill sets will stay with you, just as Fox illustrated. Because as of this interview, I'm not saying I'm in direct. My challenges are the same as hers, of course not. But having the ability to communicate or stand up for yourself or express your ideas in various ways it's wonderful. And it all stems back to Brian and his works about cakes.
I know.
I wanted those foods so badly when I was a kid.
Oh man, those descriptions are very dangerous. Meadow cream. Oh my gosh.
Meadow cream and milk saps from. I had no idea what they were, and now what, you can't go into a cafe without getting oat milk, something or other. And every time I take a sip, I go, is this what they were tasting?
I don't know.
I don't know, but one day I'll find out.
Yeah, I'm going to be making strawberry fizz this summer. I got a recipe. I'm going to try that. But
Strawberry soup? Is that from the
Strawberry
Redwall
fizz.
cookbook?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is. But I'm going to be making a how to say it, alcoholic version.
An adult version. a non-Dibbin version. Got it.
Something to sip on at the cabin, when the neighbors can't see what I'm up to.
We must keep warm somehow in the frozen north.
Also, I always want to try it. Deeper and Ever hot root, or what was it? Deeper and Ever tater and top pie that the moms ate, and then hot root soup that the otters had.
Oh yes, and
Tater.
Oh, you're killing me because I can see the cookbook on my shelf. It is just out of my cable reach, and I have to go grocery shopping this afternoon. So I'm thinking, maybe I'll just burn my mouth off, otter style. We'll see.
Do it. Quell the heat with some good old October ale.
Hey, you listening? This is exactly what we're talking about. Like, this is a perfect example. I just realized it's a perfect example. Redwall food, Redwall recipe book, her and I talking about plans to do cooking as it pertains to our own lives, getting inspired by each other to go make these soups. This is exactly the elemental thing that I love about the community.
Absolutely.
Oh, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. Oh, there's too much sentiment. I'm dying.
The nostalgia. It's everywhere.
Oh, it's everywhere. I'm going to need at least a week to clean all this up.
It is sticky. Yeah. Without Redwall, I probably would. I wouldn't have started writing creatively. Not seriously, anyway. I would have done my schoolwork, and that would have been it. I wouldn't have been able to get those social skills I so desperately needed. There's so much that I actually owe to the ROC and to Redwall. And another thing, actually, just reading Redwall got me into books, which brought so much more into my life and introduced me to other universes. It's I can't express this enough. It's such a magical thing what Redwall is and what it does to its fans. It's like it just wants to hug you and tell you everything's going to be okay and feed you like a startled horse while stroking your mane gently.
Yeah, it's very fortifying without being oppressive, which is very much needed now more than ever. And as you bring up the direction portion of it, I remember when I went to college, I went unmajored and I told my high school guidance counselor that I might do political science or something. But then I started getting, in college, back involved into the MO scene again. And I realized, what was it, college? I know I was reconnecting. Again, time is an illusion in this day and age. But
once you're out of school, concept of time.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, you cut out on my end.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, once I was out of school, I had no concept of time. And then, of course, once 2020 hit, time was a figment of my imagination. So don't worry about that.
Absolutely. And but back then, because of the ROC, I changed from being unmajored. I got into journalism, and then through writing feature stories, using the skills I got through the ROC and all of these boards, I started taking creative writing more seriously, and then got my master's in creative writing through a 2-year program. And now I'm published. Now I work for a large-scale library where it came full circle to support the institutes that helped inspire me to be creative in the first place. I shouldn't be talking to the camera so much, but please do not doubt any of the time you've ever spent role-playing or thinking about it. And please, don't put yourself down with anything along the lines of, this is meaningless, this is worthless. There is so much potential, not only in these communities, but in you as well. And now the sentiment pile is up to 2 weeks of cleaning. I might need a flamethrower, but still.
That's okay. This is one of those good messes. Of course, might come shiny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't even phrase it differently because it'd just still be a regurgitation. I can't put it any better than that. Don't doubt yourself. And there's going to be tough times, but when you have a community like the ROC to fall back on, those tough times just get a slight bit easier, and it really does make a difference. Mental health, creative health, life in general. It is a community in the literal sense of the word.
Absolutely. And there are still some of them running. Redwall Survivor Board is there. Drop a message, yell at someone to start a mini contest, or put up some of your own work.
Absolutely. Don't be shy. We do not bite.
I do.
Yeah, I do too, actually.
You might have to buy me a few drinks first, but it will happen. Sorry. Right.
So yeah, there's Redwall Survivor, also Dibbins Against Bedtime. There's the Redwall with 2 exclamation marks group on Facebook if you're looking for some place to start and you're not brave enough for any kind of role playing, you just want to say hello and actually learn some folks in the community. That is always a good.
Mm-hmm. It is a good place to start. Offer what you have, but also don't be afraid to help other people as well. I think that's a very important thing for anybody starting out in these communities or wants to take the step as a creative person. It's not just about what you're working on. It's about reading others, hearing their experiences, and helping them, because it helps everybody just as much as it helps you. Teamwork makes the dream work. Short version.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, I'm going to be dropping the Redwall Survivor Discord number for anyone who wants to pop in, say hello, introduce yourself, maybe get to know us. And Matra, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't brought up? Is there anything that Redwall has inspired you to do, or anything that you want to see come out of the community, or even anything, predictions, expectations that you have for the new Netflix news that's heading up Redwall's way?
Oh, gosh. I've been trying not to assign too many expectations to the Netflix adaptation because I fear as though if I want a full hour spread of just Ghibli-esque food drawings, like steaming pots and everything, I'm only going to be disappointed because that's realistically what I want. But no, there's really nothing I can add that hasn't already been said. Just please have courage, write what's in your heart, and be free to accept and work with others. It will change your life.
Absolutely wonderful advice. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the show. Truly, I am honored. As usual, I'm always inspired by you. Your talents, your wise words, and your friendly demeanor are always welcome. Please come back. Please come back next time I have an episode.
I didn't pay her to say that. I didn't pay her at all. Oh, what a sweetheart. You're too kind to me. Thank you. Thank you very much for hosting all of this and inviting me here. Yes, I'll be happy to drop in on another occasion. I am disappointed I didn't get to talk with some of the other people, but I do like the one-on-one as well. And I hope everybody out there enjoyed as well. Drop a line, say hi. We're friendly-ish.
It's just the 2 of us that bite. Everyone else is fine.
Everyone's fine.
Well, thank you so much, Matra. It has been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you as well.
Well, thank you for joining me on this very special episode of FOXPENMANSHIP, the Old Guard episode of the Fanfare series. Big shout out to my special guests, Nara and Matra. And to all the audience, thanks for listening. I hope you join us next time. Have a great one.